Beneath layers of earth, sand, and silence lie traces of something that doesn't belong. Perfectly cut stone too precise for the tools of its time. Ancient batteries, maps showing Antarctica, ice-free, and legends whispered across continents of gods who flew, cities that glowed, and machines that hummed long before history began keeping track. Every civilization leaves behind ruins. But what if some left behind warnings, or worse, technology we can't yet explain? In the darkest corners of our past, the timeline frays, a spark of electricity in the age of stone, a microgear embedded in ancient rock, a network of megaliths that seem to pulse with forgotten logic. Did we misplace an entire chapter of our story? Or has someone, something, been here before? From the deserts of Egypt to the highlands of Peru, echoes of high-tech knowledge ripple through the ruins, challenging everything we think we know about human progress. So sit back, relax, and let's dive into the mysteries that defy explanation, into the lost world of unexplained high-tech civilizations. In the golden light of dawn, the banks of the Sarasvati and Indus shimmer beneath a thin veil of mist. Here, in what is now northwestern India and parts of modern-day Pakistan, lies the dust-covered memory of one of the oldest civilizations ever known, ancient India. The Vedic civilization, a culture shrouded not only in sacred chants and mythic epics, but in unanswered questions about its origins, its knowledge, and its technology. The land breathes still with echoes of the past. Massive fire altars, perfectly symmetrical and aligned with astronomical precision. Underground drainage systems more advanced than some found in the modern world. Cities like Dolavira and Mohenjo-Daro, once bustling with life, reveal layouts that hint at a mathematical intelligence beyond what we've long attributed to the Bronze Age. But it is in the verses of the Rig Veda where the past grows even stranger. Written in the sacred language of Sanskrit, these ancient hymns speak of flying chariots known as vimanas, powered not by horses or wind, but by something far more enigmatic. Engines, mercury propulsion, even descriptions of aerial battles in the sky. Were these metaphors, poetic allegory, or distorted memories of something real, something technological? The mainstream view holds that the Vedic people were early pastoralists, rich in spiritual tradition, but primitive in material science. And yet, how do we explain their astonishing understanding of cosmology? The Vedas describe the Earth as a sphere suspended in space, discuss the movement of planets, and propose the concept of a universe far older and more complex than any contemporary civilization imagined. Long before Copernicus or Galileo, these ancient texts suggested that the Sun, not the Earth, was at the center of our system. Coincidence? Intuition? Or evidence of a forgotten source of knowledge? Across the subcontinent, enigmatic relics compound the mystery. In the temple city of Hampi, carvings depict objects that look eerily like rockets and flying crafts. In Ellora, the Kailasa temple, a monolithic structure carved from a single rock, is said to have been chiseled out from the top down, with engineering precision we still struggle to replicate today. How did ancient builders, supposedly armed with only chisels and rudimentary tools, achieve such structural harmony and scale? Even more baffling is the town of Mohenjo-Daro. In one excavation layer, researchers found human skeletons lying face down in the street, hands clutching each other as if death came suddenly and without warning. Nearby structures appear to have been subjected to extreme heat, so intense that some stones fused together. Theories of a massive fire or catastrophe were proposed. But one fringe idea persists, of a blast, not unlike that of a nuclear event. Could it be mere chance that the Mahabharata, another ancient Indian epic, describes a weapon so devastating that it turned entire cities to ash and scorched the earth, as if 10,000 suns had exploded at once. Skeptics are quick to dismiss these ideas as coincidence, as myth misunderstood through a modern lens. But still, the questions linger. In the depths of ancient texts, we find knowledge of atoms and the vacuum, of time cycles spanning billions of years, and of medical procedures like surgery and embryology. The Sushruta Samhita, composed around 600 BCE or earlier, describes surgical techniques that would not be seen again in the West for over 1,000 years. How could such detailed knowledge arise in such early eras? Oral tradition, perhaps? Or was there a different source? Among the more speculative theories, some suggest that the knowledge preserved in the Vedas was not invented, but inherited. That perhaps the Vedic seers were custodians, not creators, guardians of a deeper truth passed down from a civilization lost to time, one that fell not to war, but to forgetting. Others go further, proposing contact with beings not of this world, pointing to stories of gods descending in crafts that glowed with light, ancient blueprints for aerial vehicles, maps of the stars that, some argue, suggest knowledge of stellar positions that should have been unobservable without advanced instruments. But perhaps the most haunting mystery is the Sarasvati River itself. Described in detail in the Vedas as a mighty, flowing body of water, yet absent from the modern landscape. Satellite imagery has since revealed the dry course of what may have once been this lost river, suggesting that the Vedic texts may be older than we thought, that they describe a time not thousands, but tens of thousands of years ago. If so, how far back does human memory truly reach? Is it possible that the rise and fall of civilizations is not a linear path, but a cycle, where knowledge is gained, lost, and rediscovered again and again? Could the Vedic people be one such rediscovery, heirs to a past now buried under layers of ash, earth, and silence? We may never know. But as we walk the broken stones of Harappa or read the luminous verses of the Upanishads, a quiet question lingers in the air. What if the past was not as primitive as we think? What if we are the ones who have forgotten? And what then still sleeps beneath the soil, waiting to be remembered? The sands shift with the wind, whispering across the vast desert plateau of Giza. Towering above the golden horizon, 3 ancient pyramids cast long shadows that stretch like memories across time. Their silence is haunting, an enduring presence from a civilization whose mastery still humbles the modern world. This is Egypt. Not the Egypt of textbooks or tour guides, but something older, and perhaps more advanced than we dare to admit. The Great Pyramid of Khufu stands at the center, its weathered limestone casing long stripped away, yet its core remains astonishingly intact. For centuries, scholars have marveled at its construction. Over 2 million stone blocks, each weighing several tons, placed with a precision that rivals modern machining. Some joints are so tightly fitted, even a sheet of paper cannot slide between them. But beyond the craftsmanship lies something more perplexing. The Great Pyramid is not just a tomb, it never contained a mummy. No hieroglyphs adorn its inner walls. No definitive evidence of burial has ever been found inside. What then was its true purpose? Some believe it was a monument of spiritual ascension, aligned not just with the stars, but with deeper cosmological principles. Others suggest a more functional role, pointing to its perfect cardinal alignment, its proportions that mirror the golden ratio, and its placement relative to the Earth's landmass. Strikingly, the pyramid's latitude matches the speed of light in meters per second, 299,792,458, an eerie coincidence or a forgotten knowledge of measurement far ahead of its time. The intrigue deepens as we look beneath the Giza Plateau. In recent decades, radar scans and excavations have uncovered chambers and shafts hidden beneath the sand, some still unexplored. Myths of the Hall of Records, said to contain ancient knowledge from a pre-dynastic era, have long been dismissed as fantasy. And yet, the presence of these underground anomalies continues to stir quiet questions among archaeologists and seekers alike. Then, there is the mystery of how the Egyptians cut and transported their stone. In the quarries of Aswan, hundreds of miles from Giza, lies the unfinished obelisk. Abandoned in place, it offers a window into the techniques used, or attempted. The granite here is among the hardest natural materials on Earth, yet the tool marks suggest a precision that would challenge even today's diamond-tipped saws. Were copper tools, sand, and patience truly enough? Or is there more to the story? Scattered across the temples of Karnak, Luxor, and Abydos are carvings that defy simple explanation. At Abydos, in particular, a set of eroded reliefs, sometimes referred to as the helicopter hieroglyphs, appear to depict modern vehicles: a helicopter, a submarine, a jet. Mainstream Egyptology attributes these to a palimpsest, multiple carvings layered over time, but others see them as fragments of something deeper, a forgotten memory, or perhaps a glimpse into a cycle of technology that rose and fell long before our own. And what of the Dendera light? Within the crypts of the Temple of Hathor at Dendera, curious reliefs depict what appear to be large bulb-like objects held by figures, connected by serpentine filaments, and supported by what some interpret as electrical conductors. The mainstream view suggests these are symbolic representations of lotus flowers and mythic serpents, yet the resemblance to modern electrical tubes has sparked persistent speculation, especially when paired with another strange detail: the absence of soot or smoke residue in many of Egypt's inner tombs and passageways, despite the supposed use of oil lamps. Could the ancient Egyptians have used a different form of illumination? Among the most enigmatic figures of Egypt's long history is Imhotep, architect, physician, and priest, who designed the step pyramid at Saqqara. Revered as a demigod in later centuries, he was credited with knowledge far beyond his era. Some traditions hint that Imhotep was not merely a man, but a keeper of older wisdom, a survivor of an earlier, more advanced age. Could the grandeur of Egypt have been built atop the ruins of something even older? The ancient texts themselves hint at deep timelines. The Turin King list and writings of Manetho speak of divine and semi-divine rulers who reigned for thousands, even tens of thousands, of years before the pharaohs we know. A mythological history that stretches into the mists of time, populated by gods who walked as men and built monuments that still defy full understanding. Even the Sphinx holds secrets. Eroded by wind and possibly water, its body suggests an age far older than dynastic Egypt. Some geologists propose that it may date back to a time when the region experienced heavy rainfall, over 10,000 years ago. If true, this would place the monument not within the familiar Egyptian narrative, but in a forgotten epoch, lost to flood, sand, and time. And yet, no conclusive answers emerge. Mainstream archaeology continues its careful, methodical work, revealing new insights year by year. But alongside it, a parallel current of inquiry persists, one that dares to ask, what if ancient Egypt wasn't just a civilization ahead of its time, but the echo of an even older one? Were the pyramids really the pinnacle of early human ingenuity? Or were they the preserved remnants of knowledge inherited from a world that once was? We may never know for certain. But as the sun sets behind the limestone giants of Giza, as the wind carves silent verses into the sand, one can't help but wonder, what did they know that we have forgotten? What truths lie buried beneath our feet, waiting to awaken once more? As the desert wind sweeps across the plains of southern Mesopotamia, it carries with it the faint breath of the world's first known civilization. Here, between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, on land so ancient it was once called the cradle of civilization, lie the broken remnants of a people whose legacy still whispers through time. The Sumerians. The cities they built, Ur, Uruk, Eridu, now lie in ruin, their ziggurats softened by erosion, their temples half buried in sand. Yet in their time, these were marvels of order and design, rising from the earth like terraced mountains of mud brick. It is here that writing first emerged, here that astronomy was born, here that the first laws, the first schools, the first cities, appeared, seemingly fully formed. How did such complexity arise so suddenly? The mainstream view holds that the Sumerians were brilliant innovators, farmers, priests, scribes, who, over generations, laid the foundations of civilization. Their language, unrelated to any other on Earth, was etched into clay tablets in cuneiform script. Their myths spoke of gods who descended from the sky. Their records catalogued planets, seasons, architecture, and law. But as the tablets are translated, and as the dust is brushed away from their ruins, questions begin to stir. In the ruins of Nippur and Sippar, clay tablets have been uncovered that describe celestial mechanics with startling accuracy. The Sumerians knew of planets invisible to the naked eye. They tracked lunar eclipses, solstices, and the cycles of Venus with a precision that suggests centuries, if not millennia, of observation. How did such astronomical knowledge emerge so early, so suddenly? One particular artifact deepens the mystery, the so-called planisphere. Discovered in the 19th century, this ancient star chart carved in clay appears to depict a complex understanding of the night sky, including constellations and planetary movements. Some researchers argue it even records an impact event in 3123 BCE. If true, how could a Bronze Age people have tracked cosmic phenomena with such apparent sophistication? And then there is the Sumerian King List, an ancient document that records rulers reigning for hundreds, even thousands of years. It begins not with history, but with myth. After the kingship descended from heaven, the kingship was in Eridu. These antediluvian kings, rulers from before the flood, are said to have reigned for durations measured not in decades, but in millennia. Metaphor, myth, or an echo of a forgotten epoch? The Anunnaki are another source of fascination. These powerful beings, described in Sumerian texts, were said to have descended from the heavens, guided human development, and established kingship on Earth. To the modern ear, they sound like deities, figures of myth. But in some texts, their actions seem strangely procedural. They assign roles, manage resources, dictate laws. Not gods in flowing robes, but administrators, or engineers. A handful of researchers, working on the fringe of mainstream scholarship, have suggested a controversial idea, that the Sumerians were not the originators of their knowledge, but the inheritors of a lost legacy. That they may have been guided by a presence, perhaps extraterrestrial, perhaps terrestrial but forgotten, that left behind traces of advanced understanding. From the design of their stepped ziggurats, aligned with celestial events, to their complex understanding of mathematics in base 60 systems, the Sumerians show signs of a sophistication that defies the presumed arc of early human development. Their myths speak of flying chariots, of weapons that could level cities, of knowledge bestowed by beings from the stars. One Sumerian tablet describes a device called the Me, a kind of divine blueprint that held the rules of civilization, laws, sciences, and arts encoded into physical form. Could such mythic objects reflect a distant memory of lost technology? Even the Baghdad Battery, a set of artifacts found just north of Sumerian lands, believed by some to be ancient galvanic cells, has fueled speculation. If early forms of electricity were known, even in rudimentary form, could it be possible that the roots of technological experimentation extend further back than we realize? Of course, mainstream scholars urge caution. Much of what we know of Sumer comes from scattered tablets, many still untranslated. Their myths are poetic, symbolic. Their scientific achievements, while impressive, can be attributed, they argue, to centuries of careful observation and structured thinking. But even among cautious academics, there's a recognition that something about Sumer feels abrupt, that its rise was rapid, its achievements disproportionate to what came before. Was it the result of a forgotten pre-Sumerian culture, wiped out by time or cataclysm? Or did the Sumerians tap into something deeper, an ancient well of knowledge left behind by a civilization lost to history? As we sift through fragments of tablets, as we unearth buried ziggurats and decode forgotten scripts, one thing becomes clear. The story of the Sumerians is not finished. It is still being written, still unfolding in clay and stone, in whispers and shadows. And so we are left with a quiet question. Were the Sumerians truly the first great civilization? Or were they, like others across the ancient world, simply the ones who remembered, just a little more than the rest? What other secrets might still lie beneath the shifting sands of Mesopotamia, waiting patiently for their story to be told? High in the Bolivian Andes, nearly 4,000 meters above sea level, the air is thin, the landscape barren, and the silence immense. Here, on the windswept Altiplano, lies a place that continues to baffle archaeologists and captivate seekers of lost knowledge: Puma Punku. Scattered across the plateau are massive stone blocks, some weighing over 100 tons, tossed and shattered as if by an immense force. But it is not their size alone that stirs curiosity. It's their shape. Carved with clean, sharp edges, smooth surfaces, geometries that suggest a precision normally reserved for modern machinery. Among the most iconic features are the H-shaped blocks, perfectly standardized in size and design. Interlocking like pieces of an enormous three-dimensional puzzle, they hint at an advanced understanding of engineering, of modular construction. But who carved them, and how? Mainstream archaeology dates Puma Punku to around 536 CE, associating it with the Tiwanaku culture. These people, predecessors of the Inca, are credited with building a monumental complex here, one that included temples, sunken plazas, and vast terraces. Yet, when we look closer, inconsistencies emerge. The craftsmanship of Puma Punku seems far more refined than that found elsewhere in Tiwanaku. Some believe these megaliths predate the Tiwanaku by thousands of years. If so, then who built them? And with what tools? The stones themselves, primarily andesite and diorite, are incredibly hard. On the Mohs scale, both are harder than iron. The idea that these stones were shaped using primitive tools made of bronze, or stone seems, at best, improbable. Some cuts are so fine they resemble machine-milled surfaces. Drill holes appear perfectly cylindrical. Angles are laser straight. Grooves run in parallel lines, equidistant and clean, as if made with lathes or cutting wheels. Could the builders of Puma Punku have had access to tools now lost to time? Some suggest the possibility of sonic or vibrational technologies, concepts far outside mainstream thought, but curiously mirrored in ancient myths. Others point to the site's advanced understanding of stonework, drainage, and infrastructure, evidence of a culture that, if not high-tech by our standards, possessed a mastery we have yet to fully grasp. And then there's the matter of transportation. The largest blocks, some over 130 tons, were quarried miles away, across Lake Titicaca. How were they moved across mountains, valleys, and water? No wheels, no pack animals large enough, no roads that could support such a task. Was it sheer manpower and ingenuity, or something else? Local legends add another layer of mystery. The Inca, who came long after Punku had already fallen into ruin, claimed it was built in a single night by the gods, that the stones were moved by sound, that the site itself was sacred, an echo of something that had come before. And the orientation of the site? It suggests advanced astronomical knowledge. The complex was once aligned to cardinal directions with remarkable precision, hinting at a sophisticated understanding of solar and celestial cycles. Some believe the site's layout may have encoded cosmological principles or functioned as a kind of observatory. If true, it places the builders within a lineage of civilizations who not only shaped the earth, but read the stars. Yet, much of Punku remains buried. Over the centuries, earthquakes, looting, and time itself have taken their toll. Stones lie toppled and broken, their original configuration unknown. Excavations continue, slowly, carefully, but the full story remains elusive. Every discovery seems to raise more questions than answers. Was Punku the work of the Tiwanaku alone? Or did they inherit a foundation, both literally and metaphorically, from an older, forgotten culture? One whose understanding of engineering, mathematics, and design was far ahead of its time? Or are we projecting our own technological biases onto a people who, with nothing more than time, will, and ingenuity, achieved what we still struggle to understand? There are no definitive answers, but as the sun sets over the Andes, casting long shadows over the shattered stones, the silence of Punku feels heavy, not just with age, but with memory. A memory we no longer share. And so, we are left to wonder. What did the builders of Punku know about stone, about energy, about the heavens, that we have yet to rediscover? What stories lie hidden beneath the soil, waiting patiently to remind us of a chapter in history we never knew existed? Far out in the vast silence of the Pacific Ocean, where the sky meets the water in an endless horizon of blue, there are whispers, not of waves, but of something lost. Not a city, not a kingdom, but an entire continent. A world said to have vanished beneath the sea long before recorded history began. Its name, depending on the source, is Lemuria, or Mu. The ocean gives no clues. But beneath the surface, in the depths of myth, legend, and scattered ancient texts, an enigma persists. First proposed in the 19th century, not by mystics, but by scientists, Lemuria was originally a theoretical landmass, a hypothetical bridge to explain the presence of lemur fossils across Madagascar, India, and Southeast Asia. The idea was eventually abandoned by geology, replaced by the theory of plate tectonics. But by then, the name had already passed into the realm of something deeper, something older. Somewhere between science and legend, the concept of Lemuria transformed, from a lost land into a lost civilization. Accounts began to emerge, from Tamil traditions in southern India, describing a sunken land called Kumari Kandam, a cradle of ancient wisdom swallowed by the sea. From Polynesian chants and oral histories, speaking of a great land to the east, destroyed in fire and water. From the writings of Augustus Le Plongeon and James Churchward, who claimed that Mu was the mother civilization, older than Atlantis, more advanced than any that followed, and home to a people who had unlocked secrets of energy, consciousness, and cosmic alignment. But were these just metaphors for spiritual truths? Or were they echoes of something that once existed and now is gone? Some claim remnants of Lemuria still remain, fragments scattered across the Indian and Pacific Oceans. The stone ruins of Nan Madol in Micronesia, built on artificial islets with basalt columns that resemble massive organ pipes, arranged with puzzling precision. The megaliths of Easter Island, their purpose and placement still debated. Submerged structures off the coasts of India, Japan, and Yonaguni, some natural, some possibly not, rising like ghosts from the ocean floor. Could these be the broken bones of a sunken past? The legends grow stranger still. Lemuria, according to some esoteric traditions, was not merely advanced in architecture or engineering, but in consciousness. Its people were said to have developed telepathy, levitation, and energy manipulation. Some accounts even suggest a technology not of wires and machines, but of resonance, of sound, crystal harmonics, and electromagnetic fields. Did they leave behind clues? In certain temples of South India, sacred texts reference a pre-Sanskrit language of extraordinary complexity, one that some believe is all that remains of Lemurian culture. In the texts of ancient Tibet and Lhasa, scrolls speak of beings who fled a great cataclysm, bringing their wisdom to the high mountains. Even in Mesoamerican codices, vague allusions to a land in the west that sank without warning hint at a shared, global memory of loss. Modern science remains skeptical. No continental shelf or tectonic anomaly supports the idea of a sunken landmass on the scale described by Lemurian lore. And yet, sea levels have risen dramatically since the last ice age. Entire coastlines now lie underwater, entire chapters of human activity drowned with them. Could Lemuria be less a single continent and more a symbol? A name given to many scattered coastal societies lost when the sea came in? There is a growing body of thought suggesting that global civilizations, long before Mesopotamia or Egypt, may have flourished during the last glacial period, only to vanish in a wave of planetary upheaval. Lemuria and Mu, in this light, are not fantasies, but distorted memories. Myths, yes, but myths seeded with truth. Still, the idea of a high-tech Lemuria remains controversial. What kind of technology could have existed before the wheel, the plow, or bronze? Descriptions speak not of metals and combustion, but of subtle forces, magnetic currents, acoustic levitation, energy drawn from the earth itself. Concepts we still struggle to fully understand. Were they truly primitive, or simply walking a different path? Some look to the unexplained alignments of ancient sites across the globe, wondering if they reflect a once unified knowledge of Earth's energetic grid, a planetary blueprint long forgotten. Others examine the use of specific frequencies in sacred architecture, temples, stone circles, pyramids, as if tuned to a purpose no longer remembered. Could Lemuria have been part of that forgotten harmonic language? Or are we, once again, reading too much into the silence of stone and sea? As the waves lap gently against the volcanic shores of Polynesia, as coral reefs hide their secrets just beneath the surface, the story remains unfinished. Lemuria is not a place that can be pinned on a map. It is a question, a mirror held up to our own amnesia, a reminder that human history may be deeper, stranger, and more cyclic than we've ever dared to believe. And so we ask again, what if there was a civilization that rose before all others, one that left no cities we can find, but echoes that refuse to fade? What if Lemuria isn't lost, only waiting? On a remote hilltop in southeastern Turkey, where the dry winds of Anatolia stir the dust across ancient stones, a structure older than history itself lies buried beneath the earth. It was hidden for millennia beneath layers of time, until a farmer's plow struck something solid in the 1990s, revealing what would become one of the most profound archaeological discoveries of the modern age: Gobekli Tepe. Massive T-shaped pillars rise from circular enclosures, some weighing up to 20 tons. Carved from limestone and arranged with careful precision, they form rings that predate Stonehenge by over 6,000 years. Etched into their surfaces are high-relief depictions of foxes, vultures, scorpions, serpents, and abstract symbols whose meanings remain lost to us. Some of the carvings are so detailed, so anatomically accurate, that they challenge what we thought Neolithic artisans were capable of. Yet, what is perhaps most startling is not the age or the scale of Gobekli Tepe, but what it implies. Conventional narratives place the beginning of civilization around 3000 BCE, with the rise of writing, agriculture, and urban life. But Gobekli Tepe, radiocarbon dated to as early as 9600 BCE, stands in quiet defiance of that timeline. It was built by people we assumed were still nomadic hunter-gatherers, people without cities, without agriculture, without metal tools. So how did they quarry, transport, and erect such enormous stones? How did they organize labor, plan architecture, and create symbolic art on such a monumental scale? There are no nearby sources of water, no signs of permanent habitation, no cemeteries, no homes, no clear explanation. And yet, someone went to extraordinary effort to build it, not once, but in layers, over centuries. And then, mysteriously, they buried it. Why? Was Gobekli Tepe a temple? A meeting place for seasonal gatherings? A center for early spirituality, where the first myths were carved into stone? Or was it something more, a kind of encoded message? A record of forgotten knowledge passed down from an earlier age? As archaeologists peel back the earth, the site reveals complex planning. Pillars positioned in astronomically aligned patterns, carvings that seem to echo constellations. Some researchers suggest that Gobekli Tepe was a kind of observatory, tracking celestial movements long before settled life had even begun. The vulture stone, one of the most famous carvings, has been interpreted by some as a symbolic depiction of the sky, with clear references to the constellation Sagittarius, and possibly even a record of a cosmic impact event. Could this place have been built in response to a catastrophe? A warning? A monument marking a moment when the sky changed forever? While mainstream archaeology remains cautious, more speculative thinkers propose a deeper mystery: that Gobekli Tepe was not the beginning of civilization, but the echo of something that came before. A memory of a lost world, a transmission from a vanished age. There is no direct evidence of advanced technology here, no metal, no machines. But what Gobekli Tepe does challenge is our understanding of what advanced really means. Coordination, geometry, astronomy, symbolism, cultural complexity. These are the hallmarks of a mind capable of far more than survival. These are the tools of architects, philosophers, and astronomers. And the question remains, how did such minds emerge so early? Was this the work of a forgotten people, descendants of a culture lost to the younger Dryas, the sudden global cooling event that ended the last ice age? Some suggest survivors of a cataclysmic flood, a global disruption remembered in myths from Sumer, Egypt, India, and beyond, rebuilt what they could, preserving their knowledge in the only medium that could endure: stone. But perhaps the greatest mystery lies not in the structures themselves, but in the act of burial. At some point, after centuries of construction, the builders filled in the site, carefully, deliberately, as if protecting it, as if sealing it for a future not yet ready to understand. Why preserve a temple, only to erase it from memory? Did they know something was coming, or were they following a ritual we can no longer comprehend? Even today, only a small portion of Gobekli Tepe has been excavated. The hill stretches outward, its buried layers untouched, its deeper secrets still asleep beneath the soil. Each trench opened by archaeologists adds more questions to the growing silence that surrounds the site. And so, as we walk between the ancient rings of stone, we are not just visiting ruins. We are standing at the threshold of a forgotten chapter. A chapter that does not fit within our accepted timelines. A chapter that forces us to reconsider what we mean by civilization, by intelligence, by origin. What if the beginning was not the beginning? What if something was lost, and this was its echo? And as we dig further, deeper, and more carefully into the earth and into our past, what else might we find? What voices still sleep beneath the dust, waiting patiently to remind us of a world we have not yet remembered? Deep within the emerald expanse of the Central American jungle, colossal stone cities rise like ghosts from the undergrowth. Hidden for centuries beneath dense canopies of ceiba trees and strangler figs, they now stand partially reclaimed by time. Pillars, pyramids, and plazas carved with astonishing precision. This is the realm of the Maya. From the soaring temples of Tikal to the mathematical elegance of Chichen Itza, the Maya left behind not ruins, but riddles, etched in stone, aligned with the stars. Their cities, long deserted before European contact, still pulse with silent questions. Who were these people who charted the cosmos so precisely? How did they build so much, with such complexity, deep in the forest, seemingly isolated from the technological engines of the old world? And perhaps most curiously of all, why did they vanish? The Maya civilization flourished for thousands of years. Their knowledge of astronomy, mathematics, architecture, and timekeeping rivaled, and in many cases exceeded, that of contemporary societies. Their calendar systems spanned cycles not of decades or centuries, but of thousands and even millions of years. Their long count calendar begins in 3114 BCE, an epoch that precedes the rise of Sumer and the pyramids of Egypt. How did a jungle-dwelling people develop such a vast temporal awareness? Mainstream archaeology credits the Maya with extraordinary observational skill. Using nothing more than the naked eye, they tracked the movements of Venus, Mars, and the Moon. They predicted eclipses. They aligned their pyramids with solar and stellar events, crafting cities as cosmic maps, built not only for life, but for eternity. But how far did their knowledge go? At Copan and Palenque, inscriptions describe cycles of time extending back billions of years, into the mythic past, to eras and epochs we cannot place. At Uxmal and Calakmul, intricate layouts suggest not just ceremonial centers, but functional observatories, where architecture and astronomy merged in a seamless code. Even more startling are their mathematical feats. The Maya independently discovered the concept of zero, long before it appeared in the Old World. Their base 20 system allowed for advanced calculations and calendrical precision. But some researchers suggest their numerology hints at something deeper, a coded understanding of resonance, frequency, and cosmology embedded within their timekeeping. Could the Maya have understood time not as linear, but cyclical, interwoven with energy and consciousness? Artifacts like the Dresden Codex contain astronomical data so precise that it can still be used to track celestial events today. The Codex outlines the Venus cycle with an accuracy that rivals modern calculations, accounting for its 584-day orbit with less than a single day's error. How could they achieve this with no telescopes, no optics, and no known advanced instruments? Even their legends evoke a technological past. In Maya mythology, the gods created multiple worlds, destroyed and remade in cycles. The Popol Vuh, their sacred narrative, speaks of advanced beings, sky travelers, and divine architects who came before humans. It tells of civilizations that rose and fell, of beings who moved between worlds of light and stone. Were these metaphors for the rise and fall of human consciousness, or preserved memories of earlier, lost knowledge? One of the most enigmatic discoveries is the so-called Maya airstrip at Tikal. Long causeways that stretch for miles, perfectly straight, raised above the forest floor, with no known function. Were they roads, ceremonial paths, or, as some fringe theorists speculate, something more enigmatic? Some have suggested these platforms could be remnants of transportation systems or alignments for electromagnetic energy, ideas far outside the mainstream, yet sparked by the sheer mystery of the constructions. Then there is the temple at Palenque. Inside the Temple of the Inscriptions lies the tomb of the great king Pakal. On the lid of his sarcophagus is an image that has launched decades of debate. Pakal is depicted in a reclined position, surrounded by symbols of fire and motion, his hands gripping what some interpret as controls. To the untrained eye, it looks like a man inside a machine, a rocket even. Scholars insist it is symbolic, representing the journey to the underworld. But once seen through another lens, the image is hard to forget. And yet, the mystery does not lie in a single carving, or even a single city. It lies in the silence between the ruins. At its height, the Maya civilization supported millions. They built vast cities with complex infrastructure, reservoirs, aqueducts, elevated roads. Their agricultural innovations fed entire regions, without the use of metal tools or beasts of burden. Then, between the 8th and 10th centuries, they began to abandon their great urban centers. No signs of war, no great fires, just silence. Why did a civilization of such sophistication walk away from its heart? Drought, environmental collapse, political upheaval? Perhaps all of the above. But even in that collapse, the mystery deepens. Some cities, like Chichen Itza, appear to have been rebuilt, reoriented, using knowledge preserved and reshaped, as if someone, somewhere, had tried to restart the cycle, to preserve what could still be saved. So we are left with echoes, stone pyramids that map the heavens, glyphs that speak of cycles older than memory, legends of sky beings, timekeepers, and vanished ages. Was the Maya civilization truly an isolated spark of genius? Or was it the last flicker of a fire that once burned much brighter, one that we've forgotten, but they still remembered? And as we explore more beneath the canopy, through LiDAR scans that reveal hundreds of undiscovered sites, what else will come to light? What ancient technologies, forgotten maps, or coded myths still lie beneath the jungle floor, waiting to rewrite everything we think we know? What if the Maya weren't just builders of stone, but guardians of a far older secret? As the ocean waves roll endlessly across the open sea, there is a silence beneath their surface, vast, ancient, and unknowable. Somewhere, beyond the horizon, or perhaps deep below it, lies a name that has haunted human memory for over 2,000 years. Atlantis. First described by the philosopher Plato in the dialogues Timaeus and Critias, Atlantis was said to be a vast island empire beyond the Pillars of Hercules, what we now call the Strait of Gibraltar. It was a land of splendor and complexity, rich in resources, adorned with concentric rings of land and sea, and ruled by a civilization that, according to legend, possessed knowledge and technology far beyond that of its neighbors. But in a single day and night of catastrophe, it was said to have vanished, swallowed by the sea. Is Atlantis merely a myth, a metaphor for political ideals or human hubris? Or could there be fragments of truth buried within the sands of time and the depths of the ocean? Plato was precise. He gave dimensions, locations, timelines. He described a society powered by what he called divine wisdom, a people who built grand temples, irrigation canals, and harbors filled with ships and trade. He wrote of a material called orichalcum, second only to gold, said to have glowed with a reddish hue. A substance so mysterious it remained only in legend, until archaeologists unearthed ingots of reddish metal off the coast of Sicily in 2015, sparking renewed debate. Was it the same, or merely a coincidence? The question lingers. Could a real civilization have inspired the story? Across the globe, from the Azores to Antarctica, from the Caribbean to the Sahara, dozens of theories have emerged. Some believe Atlantis was a memory of the Minoan civilization, wiped out by a volcanic eruption on the island of Thera around 1600 BCE. The eruption devastated the region, and its effects rippled through the Aegean world. But the Minoans, while advanced, do not match Plato's description in scale or design. Others point to the Richat structure in Mauritania, an enormous, naturally occurring formation resembling concentric rings, eerily reminiscent of Atlantis's fabled layout. Could nature have preserved the blueprint of a once mighty city? But what made Atlantis extraordinary was not just its architecture, it was its implied technology. Plato speaks of an advanced knowledge inherited from the gods. Some interpretations see this as symbolic, referring to wisdom, order, or spiritual enlightenment. But others have read more literally. They point to records of great energy systems, mysterious flying machines, even the control of weather and crystal-based power sources. These are not details found in Plato's original texts, but they appear later in esoteric writings and channeled accounts that claim to tap into a deeper, older memory. Among the most persistent theories is that Atlantis was not simply an ancient city, but a global civilization, that its knowledge spread across the world before its destruction, leaving behind fragments in Egypt, Mesopotamia, Mesoamerica, and even India. Myths of a great flood appear across cultures, each telling of a time when an age of giants, gods, or golden people was brought to an end by water. Are these coincidences of culture, or echoes of a shared catastrophe? The architecture of ancient sites, megalithic stone blocks, cyclopean walls, precise astronomical alignments, often defies the conventional tools of their time. Could they have been influenced by a lost technology? Did the Atlanteans, if they existed, pass on a fragment of their knowledge before the waves claimed their home? Some point to the sudden emergence of civilizations like Egypt and Sumer, appearing seemingly fully formed, with writing systems, astronomy, and laws. Could their origins be linked to survivors of Atlantis? And what of the possibility that Atlantis was not just high-tech by ancient standards, but postmodern by ours? A civilization that harnessed subtle energies, geomagnetism, acoustics, crystal resonance. These concepts, once confined to the fringes of science, are now being reconsidered through modern lenses. Could the Earth itself have been part of a greater system of energy, understood, aligned, and utilized by people long forgotten? Mainstream archaeology remains firmly rooted in evidence. No definitive ruins have ever been found, no unambiguous artifacts recovered, no ancient maps that lead the way. And yet, expeditions continue, across sunken coastlines, beneath the polar ice, and into the myths of remote peoples who remember cities that no longer exist. Perhaps Atlantis is not just a place, but a question, a mirror held up to our assumptions about progress and collapse. A cautionary tale of knowledge abused, or a distant memory of a time when humanity reached heights we no longer remember. And so the search continues, not only through sonar scans and satellite imagery, but through symbols, ruins, and the subconscious echoes of stories passed down for generations. The ocean may keep its secrets, but the mind does not forget, and we are left to wonder. What if Plato was not writing fiction, but remembering? What if the ruins of Atlantis still lie beneath the sea, or beneath our feet, waiting for the right eyes to see them? And if we did find it, would we recognize what we had lost? In the eastern reaches of the Bikaya Valley, nestled beneath the shadow of the Anti-Lebanon Mountains, lies a structure that defies simple explanation. Here, in the ancient city of Baalbek, once known as Heliopolis, the city of the sun, massive stone blocks lie stacked in solemn silence, weathered by centuries yet unmoved by time. At its heart is a platform so immense, so precise, and so enigmatic that it continues to puzzle engineers, historians, and seekers alike. The Baalbek Trilithon. 3 colossal stones, each weighing approximately 800 tons, form the retaining wall of a platform upon which later Roman temples were built. Nearby, even larger blocks remain in the quarry, including the so-called Stone of the Pregnant Woman, estimated to weigh over 1,000 tons. Still attached to bedrock, it waits, as if the builders had paused mid-task, or never returned. Who carved these monoliths? And more importantly, how were they moved? Mainstream archaeology attributes the platform's construction to Roman engineers in the 1st century BCE, built to support the Grand Temple of Jupiter. The temple itself is a marvel of ancient architecture, its columns the tallest of the classical world. But the deeper you look, the stranger it becomes. The trilithon, embedded at the very base of the structure, does not match the architectural style or function of the Roman additions above. The Romans, masters of engineering, left behind detailed records, inscriptions, and tools across their empire. Yet here, no written accounts, no blueprints, no explanation of how stones of such size were transported, positioned, and fitted with millimeter precision. Roman cranes, by all estimates, could lift no more than 50 tons. The largest known Roman lifting machines would have been utterly incapable of moving the Baalbek blocks. And the terrain offers no clear solution, no evidence of ramps or roadways capable of supporting such immense loads. If the stones were dragged, what force did they use? If they were lifted, how? Could the platform predate the Romans by centuries or millennia? Some researchers suggest that Baalbek may sit atop the ruins of a much older structure, a sacred site reused by successive cultures over vast stretches of time. The Romans may have inherited the foundation, building atop it without fully understanding its origins. In this light, the platform becomes not a Roman innovation, but a legacy, an inheritance from a civilization long forgotten. Local legends whisper of ancient giants who constructed the stones with ease. Stories passed down through generations speak of knowledge lost and tools now gone. To some, these tales hint at a prehistoric people with an understanding of earthworks and resonance, of gravity and motion that surpassed even our own. Fringe theories venture further. Could sonic levitation, once a myth, have played a role? Some point to ancient texts from other cultures that describe the movement of great stones through sound and vibration. A forgotten science, perhaps, one that interacted with the natural harmonics of the earth. Others speculate about energy grids, geomagnetic manipulation, or unknown mechanical devices, none of which have left a trace, save for the silent stones themselves. Even the choice of material invites questions. The Baalbek blocks are limestone, quarried nearby, but worked with a precision that modern stonemasons would find challenging today. Their surfaces are flat, their edges sharp, and their joins tight, far tighter than necessary for a retaining wall. Why such meticulous effort? And what was the platform originally meant to support? Were the massive stones a foundation for a structure now lost, a temple no longer standing? Or were they the focus of the site themselves, part of an engineering feat whose purpose we no longer recognize? Satellite imagery reveals that Baalbek sits on a powerful geodetic line, one of several locations around the world aligned with other ancient sites, including the Pyramids of Giza and the Temple of Apollo at Delphi. Could there be a larger pattern, a network of sacred sites positioned not randomly, but with mathematical intent? And if so, who mapped it? As with so many ancient enigmas, definitive answers remain elusive. Excavations continue, and new studies of the site's geology and architecture offer insights. But the deeper we dig, the more complex the story becomes. Perhaps the builders of Baalbek were not gods, giants, or lost engineers, but humans like us, who once possessed a knowledge we have since forgotten, a knowledge that fused geometry, material science, and an intimate understanding of nature into forms that could last for thousands of years. Or perhaps the truth is even stranger, hidden not only in stone, but in the spaces between the stones, in the questions that remain unanswered, in the silence that lingers long after the last hammer has fallen. So we are left to ask, was Baalbek the work of a civilization whose capabilities challenge our assumptions about the ancient world? And if they could move mountains, what else might they have known? What secrets lie beneath the stones, waiting to be unearthed, not just from the earth, but from our own forgotten memory? Just off the southern coast of Japan, beneath the restless waters of the East China Sea, lies a structure that seems to belong more to myth than to geology. It rises from the ocean floor in sweeping terraces, sharp edges, and broad platforms, massive, angular steps that descend into the deep like the half-buried ruins of a forgotten temple. This is the Yonaguni Monument. Discovered in 1986 by a local diver near Yonaguni Island, part of the Ryukyu archipelago, the formation has since stirred one of the most enduring debates in underwater archaeology. At first glance, it appears artificial. Enormous slabs of stone arranged in geometric forms, right angles, flat planes, and stair-like features. Narrow corridors, and what seem to be entryways. Some claim to see walls, platforms, even a towering pyramid. Others speak of what looks like roads and ceremonial plazas. And the questions begin. Is this nature, or the remnant of a long-lost civilization? Mainstream geologists suggest that Yonaguni's features are the result of natural tectonic activity. The area is seismically active, and sandstone beds fractured by ancient earthquakes could, over time, erode into straight lines and flat surfaces. The sea, working patiently for millennia, may have carved these formations through mechanical weathering, splitting stone along its natural grain. But that explanation doesn't satisfy everyone. Some researchers argue that the monument's scale, symmetry, and complexity go beyond the random processes of nature. The precision of certain cuts, the parallel lines, the seemingly deliberate orientation of the formations. They point to the resemblance between Yonaguni's stepped platforms and other megalithic sites across the ancient world, structures like those in Mesoamerica, Egypt, and Cambodia. Could Yonaguni be part of a global architectural language, now submerged and forgotten? One of the most enigmatic features is a series of large flat terraces, arranged like giant steps, descending in regular intervals. On one edge of the formation, divers have identified what appears to be a wide avenue flanked by tall stone walls. Nearby, a feature resembling a throne or altar sits on a raised platform. Others claim to have seen carved symbols or reliefs, faded and eroded, but suggestive of purpose. If these were built, who were the builders? Japan's written history begins only a few thousand years ago. The Jomon culture, known for its pottery, dates back to 14,000 BCE, but no known civilization in Japan was constructing monumental architecture during that time. And yet, radiocarbon dating of corals attached to the formation suggest that Yonaguni was submerged around 10,000 years ago, near the end of the last ice age. That would place its origins, if man-made, well before the dawn of any known civilization. Could this be evidence of a lost chapter of human history? A culture advanced enough to shape the coastline, now buried beneath the waves. Some theories go even further. A few researchers propose that Yonaguni may have been part of the elusive Pacific continent, sometimes called Lemuria or Mu, a lost landmass theorized to have sunk beneath the ocean in a cataclysmic event. Though the theory of a sunken continent has been largely dismissed by modern geology, remnants of it persist in cultural memory. Legends of great islands swallowed by the sea, of civilizations destroyed in floods, of knowledge that vanished beneath the tide. The region around Yonaguni is steeped in myth. Local folklore speaks of sea kings and undersea palaces. Indigenous stories across the Pacific, from Polynesia to coastal Asia, mention great floods and vanished lands. Could Yonaguni be the physical echo of one of these stories? Others speculate about the nature of the technology used, if the structure is indeed artificial. The precision of the cuts, the scale of the monoliths, the absence of tool marks, and the logistical mystery of how such features would have been shaped and moved without modern machinery. Was there a form of construction we no longer understand? A technology based on resonance, water pressure, or even sound? Or are we seeing purpose in randomness, imposing architecture onto accident? The debate remains unresolved. Underwater visibility is often limited. Algae and coral obscure many features. And while some archaeologists and divers argue passionately for artificial origins, others remain cautious, pointing to the dangers of pattern recognition and the tendency to see intention where there is none. But whether natural or constructed, the Yonaguni monument forces us to question the boundaries of memory and time. We often imagine civilization as a straight line, from primitive beginnings to modern complexity. But what if that line loops back on itself? What if knowledge has risen and fallen, erased not by ignorance, but by oceans? Could Yonaguni be the remnant of a people who lived before history was written, before the great flood myths were told? A people whose names we do not know, but whose hands may have shaped the stone beneath the sea? Or is it a trick of the earth, nature's own architecture, echoing the forms of forgotten cities? As the waves roll across the monument, as divers descend into the blue haze of ancient silence, one truth remains. Something is down there, something vast, something strange, and we are left to wonder, is Yonaguni a lost city, a natural marvel, or a threshold, one step closer to remembering what we thought was never known? Off the remote shores of Pohnpei Island in the western Pacific, where the ocean breathes against coral reefs and the air carries the scent of salt and rain, there lies a city unlike any other. A city built not on land, but atop a coral reef. A city made of stone, massive hexagonal basalt columns stacked like matchsticks, forming a labyrinth of canals, walls, and platforms. This is Nan Madol. Rising from the sea like the skeleton of a forgotten world, Nan Madol stretches across nearly 100 artificial islets, each constructed by hand, each fortified by basalt logs weighing several tons. The black stone, volcanic and hard as iron, glints in the tropical sun, shaped into rectangles and fitted with astonishing precision. The walls tower above the water, some reaching up to 7 meters high and 5 meters thick. The channels between them form a maze of waterways, earning Nan Madol the name often whispered in awe, the Venice of the Pacific. But no other city is like this one. Who built Nan Madol? And more curiously, how? Mainstream archaeology attributes the construction of Nan Madol to the Sodelur dynasty, which ruled the island around the 13th century. Oral traditions speak of two sorcerer brothers, Olosopa and Olesihpa, who arrived from a distant land and used mystical powers to stack the great stones into place. According to legend, the brothers called the stones down from the sky, levitating them into position. Myth or memory of a forgotten method? Even by modern engineering standards, the feat is remarkable. Over 250,000 tons of basalt were used to construct the site, some stones weighing up to 25 tons each. The quarry lies far inland, across dense jungle and uneven terrain. No pulleys, no wheels, no beasts of burden. How were the stones transported to the shore? How were they ferried across water and then lifted and stacked so precisely? Theories abound. Some suggest the use of bamboo rafts and tidal movement. Others speculate about wooden rollers and sheer manpower. But even with these explanations, the scale remains daunting. For a small island population with limited resources, the construction of Nan Madol would have required not just labor, but centralized coordination, advanced planning, and a deep understanding of architecture and marine foundations. And then there is the question of purpose. Nan Madol was no ordinary city. It was a royal and religious complex, possibly a ceremonial capital. There were no fields, no obvious signs of industry or agriculture. All food would have had to be brought in. Why build such a city offshore, isolated from the mainland? Was it for defense, ritual purity? Or was the sea itself part of the mystery, an element to be mastered or perhaps worshipped? The city's layout suggests symbolic intent. The islets are arranged with geometric precision, with some aligned to cardinal directions. Central to the complex is Nan Duwas, the royal mortuary, its towering basalt walls enclosing a sacred space. The precision of its construction, tight joins, uniform elevation, and unshifting stones suggests not improvisation, but a plan. And so we are left to wonder, was Nan Madol simply the result of island ingenuity and ritual ambition? Or was it the final echo of a much older world, one that understood energy, gravity, and stone in ways we have yet to rediscover? What knowledge was lost in the tide? And what still waits beneath the waves, where time and memory sleep side by side? At the edge of the Sahara Desert, where red dust coats the wind and jagged cliffs rise from the parched earth, the Bandiagra escarpment cuts across the Malian landscape like a forgotten spine of stone. Here, nestled among the caves and cliffside dwellings, lives a people whose ancient traditions have stirred one of the most enduring mysteries in ethnographic history, the Dogon. For centuries, the Dogon people have maintained an intricate cosmology, a system of knowledge passed down through generations, not through writing, but through ritual, symbol, and story. Their masked dances, sacred carvings, and oral myths speak of creation, of the stars, and of a divine order mapped long before contact with modern science. But what has captured the imagination of researchers and skeptics alike is their knowledge of Sirius. The Dogon speak of Sirius not as a single star, but as a system, Sirius A, and an invisible companion, Sirius B. According to their oral tradition, Sirius B is dense, heavy, and orbits Sirius A once every 50 years. For Western astronomers, these facts were only confirmed in the 20th century, when powerful telescopes revealed that Sirius B was indeed a white dwarf star, unseen by the naked eye, and possessed of extraordinary mass. The Dogon, however, have held this knowledge for generations, perhaps centuries. How? The French anthropologists Marcel Griol and Germain Dieterlen, who studied the Dogon in the 1930s and 1940s, were the first to bring this knowledge to the wider world. They recorded the tribe's teachings, which included complex astronomical data, the elliptical orbit of Sirius B, its period of revolution, and even suggestions of a third star in the system, Sirius C, still debated by astronomers today. The Dogon also described the structure of the Milky Way, the rotation of planets, and the idea that the moon was dry and lifeless, long before the space age confirmed such details. Could this be coincidence? Or did the Dogon receive this knowledge from a forgotten source? Mainstream scholars suggest that Dogon astronomy may have been influenced by modern contact prior to Griol's arrival, that passing missionaries, traders, or colonists may have unknowingly seeded the information into the oral tradition. But the specificity of the Dogon cosmology, the precision, the symbolic complexity, the way it is embedded into ritual and worldview, makes such a casual transmission seem unlikely. And then, there are the Nomo. In Dogon mythology, the Nomo are ancestral spirits, amphibious beings said to have descended from the sky in a vessel that landed amid thunder and wind. Described as half fish, half human, they are often associated with water, with the regeneration of life, and with bringing knowledge to humanity. The Dogon say the Nomo came from the Sirius system, and that they were the first teachers, the ones who imparted order to the universe and taught the Dogon how to live in harmony with the stars. To some, this sounds like symbolic myth, an origin story no different from others around the world. But to others, it hints at something more. The image of the Nomo descending from the sky in a spinning, glowing arc has led some researchers to propose a radical possibility, that the Dogon were visited by beings from beyond Earth, that their knowledge of Sirius B and its orbital behavior was not learned, but remembered, passed down from a time when that contact was real. Fringe theorists have linked the Dogon to lost civilizations, to ancient astronauts, and to forgotten epochs of high technology, proposing that the Nomo were not spirits, but visitors, that their stories are not mythology, but history, veiled in the language of ritual. But perhaps the real mystery lies not in the extraterrestrial, but in the human. How does a remote culture, isolated for centuries, come to possess such intricate cosmological knowledge? Is it possible that early humans once had a more profound connection to the skies? That their understanding of the universe was not merely observational, but intuitive, guided by systems of thought that we no longer recognize as scientific, but once served the same purpose? The Dogon do not separate the physical from the spiritual. Their knowledge is woven into every aspect of life, into art, agriculture, music, and movement. The stars are not just points of light, but living entities. Time is not linear, but cyclical. The rhythms of Sirius, for them, are the rhythms of existence itself. And it raises a question that is more than scientific. It is philosophical. Have we underestimated the knowledge of the ancient world? Not just what they knew, but how they knew. In the caves along the Bandiagara cliffs, in the carved wooden masks and the sacred shrines, the Dogon continue to practice their ancient ways, guarding stories that reach beyond time, beyond place, perhaps even beyond Earth. They do not seek to prove their knowledge to outsiders. To them, it simply is, truth passed from elder to child, encoded in dance, breath, and firelight. And so we are left to wonder, did the Dogon preserve a fragment of cosmic history? A message written not in books, but in blood and song? Or is their knowledge a mirror, reflecting not what we think we know, but what we have forgotten to ask? What else sleeps in the wisdom of the world's oldest traditions, waiting quietly to be remembered? Beneath the sunlit streets of Paula, Malta, hidden away from the wind-carved temples and limestone cliffs of the surface, lies a structure so ancient, so meticulously carved, that it almost seems impossible. Descend carefully into its cool, dark chambers, and you enter a space that feels untouched by time. Carved entirely by hand into the bedrock over 5,000 years ago, the Hypogeum of Saflieni is not merely a tomb. It is something more, a subterranean world of mystery, resonance, and silence. Passages twist through 3 levels of intricately hollowed stone. Smooth walls curve into organic shapes, as though grown rather than excavated. Niches, altars, and chambers emerge from the shadows, interconnected by sloping corridors and hidden openings. And at the heart of it all lies the Oracle Room, an acoustically tuned chamber where a male voice, when chanted at a specific frequency, causes the entire structure to vibrate. The effect is immediate, visceral. Visitors describe a sensation not only heard in the ears, but felt in the bones, reverberating through the body like an ancient frequency, a forgotten sound designed to stir something deep within. Why would Neolithic builders, armed with stone tools, craft such a space? And how did they understand acoustic principles so precisely? Mainstream archaeology describes the Hypogeum as a collective burial site used by a sophisticated temple-building society during the Maltese Neolithic period, around 4000 to 2500 BCE. Over 7,000 human remains were once interred within its chambers, many of them belonging to women and children. Artifacts of shell, bone, and clay were found alongside them. No writings, but symbols etched with care. Spirals, eyes, dots, geometries that speak to something deeper, perhaps cosmological, perhaps ritualistic. Yet the architecture challenges even the most grounded explanations. Unlike the above-ground megalithic temples of Malta, which are already among the oldest freestanding structures in the world, the Hypogeum was not built of assembled blocks. It was sculpted directly into solid rock, with no metal tools, no wheels, no written records. Every chamber, every staircase, every echoing curve, carved by hand, with such smoothness, symmetry, and precision that it would challenge even modern stoneworkers. And then there is the mystery of the sound. The oracle room, a small circular space, seems to act as a resonator. A male voice chanting between 95 and 120 Hertz sets the entire chamber humming. Recent acoustic studies suggest that the Hypogeum was deliberately tuned to this frequency range, one that directly impacts the human brain, especially the parts linked to emotion and intuition. Some theorists propose that this resonance could induce altered states of consciousness, that ceremonies held within the Hypogeum weren't merely ritual, but sensory transformation. Was this space used for meditation, for healing, for communication with the dead, or with something else entirely? The resonance has no known precedent in Neolithic architecture, nor does the design logic of the Hypogeum seem solely functional. Its construction implies purpose, one that transcends burial, one that invites speculation. Some researchers have drawn parallels between the Hypogeum and other sacred acoustic sites around the world, stone chambers in Ireland, Egypt, even Peru, places that seem to harness sound in ways we're only beginning to understand. Could this knowledge have been part of a forgotten science, one rooted not in written formulae, but in experience, passed through oral tradition, encoded in ritual, and embedded in stone? And then there are the legends. Local stories speak of explorers who ventured too deep and never returned. In the early 20th century, a school group allegedly vanished after descending into a lower chamber, according to now-lost newspaper accounts. Other stories tell of secret tunnels running beneath Malta, connecting ancient sites across the island. Some say the Hypogeum is the key, the gateway to a network that once spanned the Mediterranean. Officially, only 3 levels of the Hypogeum are open, but beneath the known chambers lies a level that has not been fully excavated, its corridors partially flooded, its rooms silent and sealed. What lies below remains, for now, a mystery. And so the Hypogeum endures. It is not a ruin, but a relic, a preserved echo of a civilization that left no written language, but shaped the earth with a purpose we still struggle to comprehend. Was this the product of intuitive genius, of a people deeply attuned to the rhythms of the earth, the body, and the unseen world? Or does it hint at something else, an inheritance of knowledge from a time before memory, before history began? If resonance was used not just for sound, but for transformation, what were they awakening? What was heard in the darkness beneath the stone? And as we step quietly from its shadowed halls into the light of modern day, we are left with a quiet, unsettling question. What wisdom sleeps beneath our feet, carved in silence, waiting to be remembered? High in the Andean highlands of Peru, where thin air sharpens every sound, and the light casts long shadows over ancient stone, a structure winds across the hillside like the spine of a sleeping giant. Towering walls, zigzagging with precision, rise from the earth, massive, stoic, and utterly immovable. This is Sacsayhuamán. Perched above the former Inca capital of Cusco, the fortress of Sacsayhuamán is a marvel of megalithic architecture. The scale alone is staggering. Some of the stones used in its construction weigh over 100 tons, yet they are fitted together with such uncanny precision that not even a blade of grass can slip between them. No mortar, no visible adhesive, just stone upon stone, cut, shaped, and locked like the teeth of a colossal puzzle. At first glance, the structure seems impossibly advanced for its time. The Inca are credited with its construction, having mastered dry stone masonry and developed extraordinary engineering methods. But many questions remain, questions that grow more compelling the deeper one looks. How were these stones, some as tall as a house and as heavy as a locomotive, moved from their quarries, transported over rugged terrain, and lifted into place with such flawless alignment? The Inca had no wheels, no draft animals capable of hauling such loads, no iron tools, and yet here they stand, shaped with curved edges, perfectly interlocking corners, and surfaces smoothed to a polish. Mainstream explanations suggest that thousands of laborers, using ropes, levers, and sheer determination, may have hauled the stones into position over months or even years. Ramps and scaffolds, now eroded or dismantled, might have aided the effort. But even so, the complexity of the stone cuts, many of which have more than a dozen angles, each uniquely tailored to fit the next, seems to demand a level of planning and precision that challenges conventional logic. Could it be that the Inca inherited this site? Some archaeologists and alternative researchers have noted that the lower, larger stones of Sacsayhuamán bear a distinct difference in style from the smaller, more refined Inca additions that sit atop them. The base blocks are megalithic in scale, deeply weathered, and fitted in irregular yet seamless patterns. The stones above, while still expertly carved, follow more linear, rectilinear forms. Was Sacsayhuamán built in stages by different cultures across different epochs? The idea isn't without precedent. In many ancient sites, Machu Picchu, Ollantaytambo, Baalbek, lower megalithic layers often appear older, heavier, and more enigmatic than the structures built atop them. If the Inca did inherit the foundations of Sacsayhuamán, who then were the original builders? And what techniques did they possess? Among the more speculative theories is the notion that the stones were softened, perhaps through the use of unknown chemical processes or plant-based compounds that could temporarily alter the molecular structure of the rock. Legends from the region speak of a sacred liquid that could make stone malleable, like clay. While no such substance has been discovered, the idea persists, fueled by the smooth, organic curves found throughout the site. Others point to vibrational tools, technologies that harnessed sound or frequency to cut and move stone. While such ideas remain on the fringe, recent experiments in acoustic levitation and resonance do hint at unexplored possibilities. Could ancient civilizations have known more about natural forces, earth energy, vibration, even gravity, than we credit them for? Then there is the question of purpose. Sacsayhuamán is often referred to as a fortress, but its scale and design suggest something more. The zigzag pattern of the walls is not merely defensive, it mirrors lightning, a sacred symbol in Inca cosmology. From the air, the site resembles the head of a great puma, with the body stretching through the city of Cusco below. Ceremonial plazas, ritual baths, and hidden chambers within the complex hint at deeper spiritual significance. Could Sacsayhuamán have been more than a military stronghold? Perhaps a sacred site, aligned with celestial events, harnessing energy from the land, built as a place of convergence between earth and sky? Seismic resilience is also embedded into its design. The interlocking stones are not uniform. They curve and slope, fitting together like the pieces of a multidimensional puzzle. When earthquakes strike, the stones shift slightly, then settle back into place. The technique is so advanced that modern engineers continue to study it for inspiration. Was this learned through trial and error, or passed down from a forgotten master builder? And what lies beneath? Subterranean tunnels, known as chincanas, are rumored to connect Sacsayhuamán to other sites around Cusco, even to the Coricancha temple miles away. Many of these tunnels have collapsed or been sealed. Those who ventured in speak of endless passageways, sudden drops, and strange acoustics. Are these just local tales, or traces of a vast underground infrastructure we no longer understand? In the end, Sacsayhuamán stands as a paradox, a place of brute strength and delicate design, of monumental stone and spiritual subtlety. It raises questions about the capabilities of ancient civilizations and about the nature of knowledge lost to time. Were the builders of Sacsayhuamán simply master masons with skills honed through generations? Or did they inherit techniques and perhaps purposes from a civilization far older, whose story remains buried beneath stone? And as we stand before these towering walls, shadows dancing along their flawless seams, we are left with one lingering question. What were they truly building? Walls, or something far more enduring? Amid the golden plains and rolling granite hills of southeastern Zimbabwe, tucked beneath the warm skies of sub-Saharan Africa, lies a forgotten city of stone. Silent and still, it rises from the landscape like a memory carved into the earth. These are the ruins of Great Zimbabwe, an ancient stone complex so vast, so enduring, and so mysterious that its very existence rewrote the history of a continent. High stone walls twist and curve without the use of mortar, rising up to 11 meters in height and stretching for hundreds of meters in length. They encircle an intricate network of enclosures, passageways, and platforms, all constructed with a precision that defies the simplicity of their form. Smooth granite blocks, each one shaped by hand, were stacked in interlocking patterns, some weighing hundreds of kilograms. The result is a seamless flow of architecture, curved, harmonious, and remarkably stable. Even after centuries of exposure to the elements, these walls have not collapsed. Who built this place, and how? Mainstream archaeology attributes the construction of Great Zimbabwe to the ancestors of the Shona people, dating its peak to between the 11th and 15th centuries CE. At its height, the city may have housed over 20,000 people. It served as a center of trade, politics, and spiritual life, connected to a vast network stretching across the Indian Ocean and into the Arabian Peninsula. Artifacts discovered here, Chinese porcelain, Persian glass, Arab coins, suggest a thriving cosmopolitan city engaged in long-distance commerce. But even with these explanations, the scale and precision of Great Zimbabwe continue to provoke questions. How did its builders manage such sophisticated engineering without blueprints or binding agents? How did they quarry, shape, transport, and stack such massive volumes of granite with no wheeled carts or draft animals? And why, in a time and place dominated by organic materials, mud, wood, thatch, did they construct this immense complex entirely of stone? There are no written records, no inscriptions, no firm accounts of its founding. Oral histories provide fragments, but much remains unsaid, lost in the passage of time and the colonial erasure that followed its rediscovery. Early European explorers, unable or unwilling to believe that Africans could have built such a site, attributed its construction to outsiders, Phoenicians, Arabs, or even biblical figures. These theories have since been discredited, and yet the impulse to search for a deeper mystery remains. Because something about Great Zimbabwe does feel older than history, older than memory. At the heart of the site stands the enigmatic Great Enclosure, a massive elliptical wall enclosing a conical tower unlike anything else in African architecture. Its function is unknown. It has no doors, no stairs, no apparent purpose. Some have called it a granary, others a ritual monument. But it remains mute, its smooth surface offering no clues. Just a perfect, tapering spiral of stone, rising quietly into the open sky. Could the architecture here reflect more than practical needs? Some researchers suggest that the design of Great Zimbabwe incorporates astronomical alignments, its walls oriented toward solstices, or echoing constellations significant in ancient African star lore. Others believe the site mirrors sacred geometry, or vibrational harmonics, its curves and circles designed to resonate with something beyond the physical. And then, there are the soapstone birds. 8 of them were found at the site, stylized carvings mounted on columns, now symbols of Zimbabwe's national identity. Half eagle, half human, these birds are thought to be totems or spiritual messengers, but their full meaning remains uncertain. They watch, unblinking, from their high perches, silent witnesses to a story we no longer remember. Could Great Zimbabwe have been more than a city? Could it have been a spiritual machine, a place designed not just for living, but for transforming? A site where architecture, cosmology, and ritual converged into something more. And what happened to its people? By the 15th century, the city was abandoned. The reasons are unclear. Environmental decline, resource exhaustion, shifting trade routes, all are possible. But like so many ancient centers of power, it disappeared not with violence, but with silence. Its stones left undisturbed, its secrets buried in the dust. Today, archaeologists continue to study the site, revealing new insights with each excavation. But for all we've learned, the deeper questions remain. Why here? Why stone? And why so enduring? Was Great Zimbabwe the pinnacle of a forgotten chapter in African history, one of advanced engineering, spiritual knowledge, and global connection? Or is it a solitary monument, born of vision and necessity, whose builders understood their land in ways we have only begun to imagine? The walls still stand, the birds still watch, and the stones, quiet, ancient, unmoving, continue to ask the question no one can yet answer. What was truly built here, and what remains to be uncovered? Beneath the sweltering sun of southern Florida, surrounded by tropical palms and the quiet hum of passing winds, stands a place that defies easy explanation. Carved from more than 1,100 tons of coral rock, cut, shaped, and stacked with a precision that seems almost improbable, it rises not from antiquity, but from the hands of a single man in the 20th century. This is the Coral Castle. Towering monoliths, weighing as much as 30 tons, are positioned so precisely that some pivot with the gentlest push of a finger. A 9-ton gate once swung effortlessly on its axis, balanced so finely that it barely made a sound. There are crescent-shaped walls, spiral obelisks, a functioning sundial calibrated to the minute, and stone chairs placed as if waiting for a vanished council to return. All of it, quarried, carved, and constructed by one man, Edward Leedskalnin. A Latvian immigrant with no formal engineering training, Leedskalnin built the Coral Castle over the course of nearly 30 years, working almost entirely alone and only at night. Slight of frame, standing barely over 5 feet tall, he claimed no help. No machinery, no blueprints, just simple hand tools, a tripod, and a deep understanding of something he never fully explained. He never revealed his secrets. When asked how he moved the massive stones, he would only smile and say he had discovered the laws of weight and leverage, or, as he once hinted, the secrets of the pyramids. But what were those secrets? Visitors and onlookers reported strange sights, heavy stones seeming to float, a humming sound in the air, movements that seemed too smooth, too precise. Some speculate he may have used hidden pulleys or clever counterweights. Others believe he discovered a way to manipulate gravity or resonance, tuning into the natural frequencies of the coral itself to make it momentarily weightless. Leedskalnin's writings offer cryptic clues. He left behind a series of pamphlets, magnetic current being the most well-known, in which he proposes alternative theories of magnetism and energy. He believed that all matter was held together by magnetic flow, not electrons, that the Earth itself was alive with unseen forces that could be harnessed with the right knowledge. Was it simply eccentric science, or something more? Modern engineers continue to puzzle over how he accomplished such feats without cranes or powered tools. The stones were quarried from oolite limestone, a coral-based rock that is dense and abrasive, difficult to cut, heavier than it appears. To lift and maneuver blocks of this size would require machines capable of exerting enormous force. And yet, Leedskalnin, working by lantern light in the quiet of the night, built an entire complex that has withstood hurricanes, decades of exposure, and the scrutiny of skeptics. The layout of Coral Castle is more than artistic. It appears intentional, possibly symbolic. The site is aligned with celestial events. The sundial tracks time with remarkable accuracy. Openings and angles throughout the compound suggest awareness of the equinoxes and solstices. Some researchers have proposed that the entire site functions as a kind of observatory, or even a cosmic map, a message encoded in stone. Could Leedskalnin have rediscovered a lost principle of construction, one known to ancient builders, from Giza to Cusco, and somehow forgotten in the modern age? Others note the striking similarities between Coral Castle and other megalithic sites: the tight, interlocking joints, the massive, precisely carved blocks, the uncanny alignment with astronomical patterns. Is it possible that Coral Castle, though modern in origin, stands as a bridge between eras, a faint echo of ancient knowledge briefly reborn? And then, there is the question of why. Leedskalnin claimed he built the castle for a lost love, a young woman who left him before they could marry. Some say Coral Castle is a monument to heartbreak, a lifelong poem written in stone. But perhaps it was more than grief that fueled his work. Perhaps it was obsession, with geometry, with resonance, with hidden forces beneath the surface of reality. Was Coral Castle merely the work of an inspired genius, a solitary labor of art and will? Or was it a proof of concept, evidence that the principles of ancient engineering are not lost, but simply waiting to be rediscovered? Today, Coral Castle remains open to the public, drawing thousands each year to marvel at its mysteries. The gate no longer turns. It had to be removed and rebalanced in the 1980s using modern cranes, yet it never functioned the same. The secrets of its construction were buried with Leedskalnin in 1951. And still, the stones stand, silent, massive, immovable, not ancient, but timeless. And so we are left to wonder. What did Edward Leedskalnin truly discover in the silence of his Florida nights? Was he a man ahead of his time, or the last to remember something the rest of us forgot? What quiet knowledge lies hidden in plain sight, waiting to reshape the world we thought we understood? Across the rolling hills of Oxfordshire, England, where mist clings to the grasses and the wind whispers through ancient hedgerows, a figure stretches across the land, silent, enormous, and otherworldly. Etched into the chalk hillside with elegant sweeping lines, the Uffington white horse has gazed skyward for millennia. At over 110 meters long, its minimalist form, made of deeply cut trenches filled with crushed white chalk, appears best not from the ground, but from above, as if it were meant to be seen by something not bound to the earth. The design is not crude or primitive. It is abstract, fluid, almost modern in its geometry. A galloping form with exaggerated limbs and a long, graceful neck. For centuries, it was thought to be medieval or Roman in origin. But recent dating techniques have revealed something far more astonishing. The Uffington white horse was created sometime between 1380 and 550 BCE, during Britain's late Bronze Age or early Iron Age. That makes it not only the oldest hill figure in the British Isles, but one of the oldest geoglyphs in the world. And yet, we still don't know who carved it, or why. What culture, in an age without aerial technology, created an artwork only fully visible from the sky? What tools did they use? What knowledge did they hold that allowed for such large-scale, enduring precision, on a sloping, curved hillside with no known surveying equipment? And perhaps most importantly, what message were they trying to leave behind? Mainstream archaeology suggests that the Uffington horse may have had religious or ceremonial significance. It may have represented a tribal symbol, a deity, or a solar creature, perhaps tied to Celtic horse goddess Epona or earlier Indo-European traditions. The area surrounding the figure includes an Iron Age hill fort, burial mounds, and long barrows, hinting at deep ritual importance. But the scale and placement of the figure continue to provoke more questions than answers. Why here, on this specific hill? Why this form, so deliberate, so stylized, and yet so enduring, surviving erosion and weather for over 3,000 years? Every generation has had to maintain it. Without regular scouring, the cleaning and recutting of the trenches, the figure would vanish under grass and soil in a matter of decades. And yet, someone has preserved it, century after century, as if compelled to do so by memory or by duty. Could it have been more than an artistic statement? Some researchers have noted that the horse aligns with celestial phenomena, its head pointing toward the rising sun at midsummer, its position echoing patterns found in solar and lunar alignments. Others suggest that the figure served as a kind of boundary marker, a territorial claim written not on paper, but into the earth itself, a symbol of power visible for miles. Then there are those who speculate about something more enigmatic. The idea that the Uffington horse was created to be seen from the air has led to a wave of interpretations, some mythic, others speculative. Could it be that the builders possessed some forgotten way of perceiving or measuring the land from above? Could the figure have been meant not for human eyes, but for the eyes of gods, or something else entirely? Some fringe theories even suggest that the white horse is a signal, a geoglyph created for aerial recognition, like the Nazca lines of Peru. Though thousands of miles apart, both the Nazca lines and the Uffington horse share similarities in their scale, simplicity, and visibility only from the sky. Is it mere coincidence? Or could they hint at a global tradition of Earth-based messages stretching across time and geography, left by cultures who understood or remembered something we no longer do? The horse's abstract form, strikingly modern in its aesthetic, has also baffled artists and historians alike. With no realistic rendering, no clear cultural parallels in local iconography, it seems to have sprung from a different logic altogether. Some believe it represents more than a horse, that it could be a constellation, a mythic creature, or even a symbolic equation carved in visual language. And the hill itself, White Horse Hill, holds secrets too. Local legends speak of dragons slain nearby, of buried treasure, of sacred kings and ancient rituals. The nearby Dragon Hill, a flat-topped mound thought to be artificially shaped, is said to be the place where St. George killed the dragon, a story older than the saint himself, echoing myths far deeper in time. Beneath the quiet green of the English countryside, layers of history, and perhaps prehistory, whisper of a knowledge lost to modern minds. A knowledge not only of the land, but of the sky, of time, of harmony between earth and myth. Was the Uffington white horse a religious symbol, a tribal signature, a beacon to the gods? Or was it something else entirely, a message left in plain sight, carved into the living skin of the earth, meant for those who knew how to read it? Today, planes fly overhead, satellites orbit above, and digital maps chart every line of terrain. But long before any of that, someone stood on this hillside, envisioned a shape far too large to see from the ground, and brought it into being. And so we are left to ask, what mind conceived of such a creation, before the age of flight, before even the wheel? What purpose drove them to leave their mark not on stone or parchment, but into the land itself? And what other messages, half hidden by time and grass, still lie waiting beneath our feet, deep in the heart of the Ural Mountains, where the land is dense with pine forests and the soil preserves the memory of ancient ice? Something strange once emerged from a forgotten peat bog. In 1890, while digging for gold near the village of Kalata, Russian workers uncovered a carved wooden figure unlike anything seen before. Towering, linear, and covered in cryptic symbols, it stood upright as if still watching. This is the Shigir idol, an artifact so old, so hauntingly intricate, that its very existence has forced historians to reconsider the timeline of human civilization. Today, housed within a glass case in the Sverdlovsk Regional Museum in Yekaterinburg, the idol stretches nearly 3.5 meters tall. Originally, it may have stood over 5 meters, making it the tallest known wooden sculpture from the ancient world. But it is not its size that commands awe, it is the detail. Carved into the larchwood are faces, elongated, expressionless, almost otherworldly, and geometric patterns, zigzags, chevrons, and hash marks that spiral down its length. The carvings appear intentional, symbolic, deliberate, not ornamental, but encoded. The surface of the wood is like a language waiting to be understood. And the most startling detail of all? The Shigir idol is over 12,000 years old. Radiocarbon dating, first conducted in the 1990s, and then verified again in 2018 using more refined techniques, places its creation at around 10,000 BCE. That means it predates the pyramids by more than 7,000 years. It was carved at a time when much of the world was still gripped by the last ice age, when humans were presumed to be living in small, nomadic bands, just beginning to experiment with rudimentary agriculture. So who, then, carved this? And why? Mainstream archaeology suggests it may have been created by hunter-gatherers, a spiritual or shamanic artifact meant to mark territory or tell stories about creation, ancestors, or cosmology. But this explanation, while plausible, barely scratches the surface of its enigma. Because the Shigir idol does not look like other artifacts of its time, nothing about it seems accidental or primitive. The symmetry of its carvings, the abstraction of its features, and the sheer scale of the figure suggest a symbolic language, perhaps even a system of writing, that long predates anything previously known. Was it a totem? A record of mythic knowledge? A kind of ancient codex carved not into stone or clay, but into the living memory of a tree. Some researchers, hesitant to impose modern interpretations on such a distant past, have nonetheless acknowledged that the motifs carved into the idol resemble elements found in later Neolithic and even Bronze Age symbology. Could the Shigir idol have been the origin of a forgotten symbolic tradition? One that stretched silently across centuries, leaving faint echoes in the designs of pottery, jewelry, and ritual monuments? others go further. Some speculative theorists suggest that the idol may be evidence of an advanced Ice Age civilization, one capable not only of complex abstract thought, but of preserving knowledge in durable, encoded forms. The durability of the idol itself, a result of its burial in anaerobic peat, may have been intentional. Was it meant to last? Was it hidden for a reason? And what of the faces? 7 of them appear on the figure, elongated, stylized, vertical, watching from all sides. They seem less human than archetypal. Some interpret them as spirits or ancestors, others as representations of different beings, each face perhaps marking a different epoch, a different truth. Could this have been a timeline? A history carved in symbols? The geometric patterns, too, invite deep curiosity. Are they decorative, or do they serve a function, mathematical, calendrical, or even linguistic? Could the chevrons and spirals be early forms of data, encoded through shape and repetition? If so, the Shigir idol may be the earliest surviving example of symbolic communication through abstract design, a kind of proto-writing untouched by alphabet or pictograph. If these carvings represent knowledge, who passed it on? And to whom? The climate of the Ural Mountains would have been harsh during the time the idol was carved. Yet, the people who made it had the time, the tools, and the vision to create something not functional, but philosophical. Something meant not for survival, but for memory. Could they have been part of a larger, now forgotten tradition? The landscape around the site has yielded few similar artifacts. There are no matching idols, no ruins of temples, no tombs filled with gold. The Shigir idol stands alone, a solitary survivor of a culture that vanished into the mists of time. Or perhaps it was not a culture, but a moment, a single generation of thinkers, artists, and storytellers who left behind this monument to the mysteries they held and the questions they could not answer. In the sterile stillness of the museum today, the idol remains inscrutable. Visitors gaze up at its expressionless faces, at its etched markings, and feel the pull of something older than civilization. Not just a statue, but a presence, a riddle carved in wood. And so we are left to wonder, was the Shigir idol a spiritual totem? A lost language? A relic of a civilization too ancient to fit within the lines of recorded history? And if it was one piece of a greater whole, what else may lie beneath the forests and the bogs of the world, still buried, still waiting to speak? In the mist-draped forests and coastal valleys of ancient Japan, long before the first emperors rose and the great Buddhist temples adorned the landscape, a different kind of civilization flourished, quietly, persistently, and for thousands of years. Their presence remains carved in clay and buried beneath centuries of soil. This was the world of the Jomon. Stretching as far back as 14,000 BCE, the Jomon period marks one of the longest continuous cultures in human history. The word Jomon means cord-marked, named for the intricate impressions left in the pottery they created, some of the oldest ceramics ever discovered on Earth. Their pots, adorned with swirling patterns and coiled motifs, seem to belong not to the prehistoric, but to the avant-garde. Elegant, complex, and often mysterious in form, they hint at a society that prized not only function, but form, symbol, and expression. And yet, the Jomon were once believed to be simple hunter-gatherers. For centuries, they were cast in the shadows of later, more centralized cultures, like the Yayoi and the Yamato. But that story is beginning to change. Recent excavations across the Japanese archipelago have revealed a people far more advanced than previously imagined. Settlements like Sanai Maruyama in northern Honshu show evidence of large-scale architecture, permanent dwellings, storage pits, ceremonial buildings, and even roads. A city of over 500 people, thriving 5,500 years ago. Wooden posts once stood in tall alignments, possibly astronomical or spiritual in function. Layers of tools, ornaments, and ritual objects suggest not mere survival, but culture, community, complexity. What kind of society builds without needing to conquer? What kind of civilization lasts for 10,000 years without cities, empires, or war? And what knowledge might they have possessed? Among the most enigmatic of Jomon artifacts are the dog, small clay figurines found across the country, many dating back over 7,000 years. They are not lifelike. Instead, they are stylized, symbolic. Some have enormous eyes, pointed heads, and strange body shapes. Some appear to wear suits or helmets. Many researchers believe they represent fertility, spiritual entities, or ancestors. But others see something more unusual. To the modern eye, certain dog figures resemble beings encased in advanced gear. Wide, goggled eyes, breastplates, articulated limbs. Are these purely symbolic forms, or depictions of something remembered or witnessed? Mainstream archaeology interprets the dog through the lens of ritual, a visual language of the sacred and the domestic. Yet their uniformity and sheer strangeness raise deeper questions. Were they idols, healing totems, or records of something that once walked among the Jomon people, something not entirely human? And then there are the stone circles, Japan's prehistoric stone circles, such as those at Oyu and Komakino, date back thousands of years. Massive stone rings constructed with careful precision, aligned to celestial events, summer solstices, lunar phases. These are not burial sites, but communal spaces, observatories perhaps, or ceremonial grounds attuned to the rhythms of the sky. How did a culture with no writing system, no metal tools, and no formal mathematics create such alignments? Was it careful observation alone, or the preservation of a deeper tradition, one perhaps shared with other ancient societies across the globe? Intriguingly, some Jomon pottery and symbolism echoes patterns seen in other early civilizations: spirals, concentric circles, woven loops. Is this universal symbolism a convergence of human experience? Or is it possible that these cultures were not as isolated as we once believed? Underwater, the mystery deepens. Off the coast of Yonaguni, in Okinawa Prefecture, lies a massive submerged structure often attributed to natural geology. But some researchers believe it may be a sunken Jomon-era monument, perhaps a temple, plaza, or ceremonial terrace. Carved steps, right angles, and platform-like levels suggest intentional shaping. If proven artificial, it would rewrite the understanding of early Japanese engineering and its timeline. Could the Jomon, long thought to be simple forest dwellers, have possessed maritime capabilities and architectural knowledge we have yet to recognize? Their seafaring abilities are already being reassessed. Shell mounds and fishing tools reveal deep expertise with coastal ecosystems. Their trade networks, too, may have stretched across islands, sharing obsidian, lacquer, and ideas. How far did they reach? And what did they carry, not just in goods, but in knowledge? Despite the vast span of their culture, 10 millennia of uninterrupted development, the Jomon left no written language, no chronicles, no monuments in stone. What survives are fragments, beads, figurines, pots, pits. And yet, those fragments speak volumes. They hint at a worldview centered not on conquest, but on harmony, with nature, with the cosmos, and perhaps with forces we no longer recognize. The Jomon disappear slowly from the historical record, absorbed or displaced by the agrarian Yayoi culture around 300 BCE. But their legacy lingers, in the soil, in the myths, in the quiet persistence of their artifacts. And we are left to wonder, were the Jomon simply masters of the Neolithic, builders of clay and wood, watchers of the stars? Or were they something more, a civilization that understood subtle energies, long rhythms of the earth, and patterns of life now lost to time? What still lies buried beneath Japan's forests and shores, waiting to remind us that the past is not always primitive, and that technology comes in many forms? Across the vast and wind-swept steppes of Central Asia, where landscapes stretch toward the horizon in endless waves of earth and sky, there once lay a kingdom, or perhaps something more. Its name has been whispered through old maps and forgotten manuscripts, a name that doesn't appear in most textbooks, yet lingers in margins and legends. That name is Tartaria. Marked on centuries-old maps as Tartari, this land spanned an enormous region, from Siberia to Mongolia, from the Caspian Sea to the Pacific Ocean. Western cartographers of the 16th and 17th centuries recorded it as a sprawling empire, peopled by the mysterious Tartars. But the details were always vague. Was it a Mongol remnant? A myth? A placeholder for the unknown? Or was it something else entirely? Something deliberately obscured? The physical remnants are sparse, but curious. Across Eastern Europe, Central Asia, and parts of Russia, there stand curious buildings, ornate, monumental, and anachronistic. Grandiose structures with onion domes, star-faceted spires, and complex geometric symmetries. Some appear too advanced for the time and place they were supposedly built. Others bear architectural signatures that don't quite fit the known styles of the cultures around them. Cathedrals without records of their construction. Star forts whose aerial geometry can only be appreciated from above. Entire cities said to be built within a few short years, too quickly, some argue, for the technology of their time. And beneath these cities, subterranean tunnels and networks, sealed and forgotten. What kind of civilization could produce such feats, so widespread, yet so poorly documented? The mainstream explanation views Tartary as a broad geographic designation used by Europeans to describe the vast lands inhabited by Turkic and Mongolic peoples. It was a cartographic simplification, not an actual empire. The buildings, they say, are the works of Russian imperial ambition, colonial expansion, or simply local ingenuity. The inconsistencies are the product of incomplete records, not conspiracy. But for some, the gaps are too large to ignore. Why do 18th and 19th century World's Fairs, particularly in Paris, Chicago, and San Francisco, display buildings that look ancient, yet were supposedly built in mere months, then torn down soon after? Why do photographs from the 1800s show cities with empty streets and buildings caked in mud, as if dug up, not constructed? Why do so many structures across Eurasia seem to share a strange and unified architectural language, yet have no shared history? This is where the mystery deepens, and where the theory of a lost Tartarian empire begins to take form. Some researchers propose that Tartaria was not merely a historical region, but the remnant of a global, technologically advanced civilization. A society with knowledge of energy systems, possibly electromagnetic or etheric, harnessed through architecture itself. Buildings were not just shelters, but resonators. Domes, spires, and star-shaped layouts were not decorative. They were functional. Could the towers and minarets scattered across these regions have been part of a forgotten energy grid? Could the strange similarities between distant star forts point to a unified system of defense, or something more metaphysical? The theory suggests that Tartaria harnessed free energy, not in the science fiction sense, but through principles of frequency, resonance, and atmospheric electricity. Proponents point to devices like Tesla coils and ancient atmospheric energy collectors, arguing that Tartarian architecture may have functioned in similar ways. And if such a civilization once existed, what happened to it? Here, the story becomes shadowed. Some claim it was destroyed in a cataclysm, a flood, a fire, a war beyond recorded history. Others point to the idea of a reset, a systematic erasure of the past, followed by rewritten narratives, falsified timelines, and constructed empires laid over ancient ruins. Indeed, older maps are full of erased names, shifting borders, and inconsistencies. Place names disappear. Cities are renamed. Historical figures become composites or vanish altogether. In official histories, Tartari fades, transformed from a named empire to an archaic footnote. Was this mere evolution of knowledge, or an intentional act of forgetting? Skeptics argue that the Tartaria narrative is built on misinterpretation, romanticism, and flawed evidence. That it is a mythology woven from architectural coincidence, mistranslated maps, and the human desire to believe in lost worlds. And yet, the questions persist. Why do so many buildings from the 1800s exhibit what appears to be weathering far older than their recorded age? Why do so many ancient-looking structures contain features suggestive of high-precision stone cutting, even resonance-based technologies? And why, despite centuries of occupation, have certain regions yielded so few construction records, but so many signs of excavation? Perhaps the mystery of Tartaria is not about a single lost empire, but about something broader, the possibility that our collective story may be missing entire chapters. That civilizations may rise, fall, and vanish, not always with fire and noise, but with silence and omission. And so we are left to wonder, was Tartaria just a name on a forgotten map, stretched across the blank spaces of old atlases? Or was it the final echo of a civilization that knew the Earth and its energies in ways we no longer understand? If the remnants still stand, scattered across continents and buried beneath rewritten histories, what else remains to be uncovered just beneath the surface of the story we've been told? In the far north, where the forests give way to icy fjords and the wind carries the scent of pine and salt, a mythic landscape emerges, half memory, half dream. Towering peaks rise like frozen sentinels, aurora lights ripple across the black sky, and buried deep within sagas and runestones are echoes of a lost world, one that the Norse called Thule, and the Greeks remembered as Hyperborea. Both names point north, not just geographically, but mythologically, toward a place of eternal daylight far beyond the known world, a realm untouched by time, a land of peace, beauty, and unimaginable power. What was Hyperborea, and why do so many ancient traditions, from the frozen shores of Scandinavia to the marble halls of Athens, speak of it with such reverence as if recalling something real? The Norse myths, preserved in texts like the Poetic Edda and Prose Edda, are filled with tales of the gods, giants, and men who walked among them. But woven through these stories is something deeper, a cosmology that reaches beyond symbolism. 9 realms connected by a great cosmic tree, Yggdrasil, a system of worlds, layered and interlinked. The Aesir gods, with their shining halls and advanced tools, are described not just as divine, but as powerful and wise. Odin himself is not a god of brute force, but of secret knowledge, of runes, resonance, and otherworldly sight. Was this poetic metaphor, or the fragmented memory of something more advanced? Consider Bifrost, the rainbow bridge connecting Midgard, the world of men, with Asgard, the realm of the gods. Often depicted as a shimmering arc of light, some have speculated whether it describes more than a celestial phenomenon. Could it be a memory of an energy bridge? A technological passage between dimensions, or points on Earth no longer connected? The Norse possessed no writing system in the early ages of their mythology, and yet the runes, angular, sharp, and often etched into stone or metal, were believed to carry magical properties. Odin, in myth, sacrifices himself on the world tree to gain the wisdom of the runes. Not words, but forces. Symbols with resonance, with power. Ancient coding, or an understanding of frequency and vibration now lost. Meanwhile, the Greek accounts of Hyperborea, recorded by Herodotus, Pindar, and Diodorus Siculus, describe a land beyond the north wind, Boreas, a place where the sun never sets, the air is pure, and its people live in joy, free from sickness and war. It was said to be accessible only by the initiated, or the divine. The Hyperboreans were believed to live for 1,000 years, guided by the sun god Apollo, who would retreat there in winter to renew his strength. How did the Greeks, people of the Mediterranean, envision such a place with such clarity? Was Hyperborea a real region, perhaps the Arctic, when it was warm and habitable before the end of the last ice age? Geological studies suggest that parts of the Arctic may have been lush and temperate tens of thousands of years ago. Could it have hosted a civilization now lost beneath ice and silence? Some speculative researchers propose that both Hyperborea and the Norse conception of Asgard refer to the same forgotten civilization, one that existed in the high north, technologically advanced and spiritually elevated. A society that understood how to use the Earth's natural energies, that built with sound, with crystal, with knowledge of the stars and seasons. In these theories, the collapse of Hyperborea was not mythic, but real, perhaps triggered by a shift in the Earth's poles or a global catastrophe lost to time. As the world changed, the survivors of Hyperborea fled, spreading fragments of their knowledge across the globe, to Egypt, to India, to the Americas, and to the Norse peoples whose memories lived on as gods and giants. Could the Norse gods themselves be the mythologized leaders or sages of an ancient forgotten realm? Modern maps do not show Hyperborea. The Arctic is now a place of frozen oceans and drifting ice. But earlier maps, like Mercator's 16th century depiction, show strange land masses at the North Pole, 4 islands divided by rivers surrounding a central mountain, a formation that echoes the myth of a circular paradise at the roof of the world. Mainstream historians consider these maps speculative, fanciful. Theories about Hyperborea and ancient advanced Norse cultures are often dismissed as pseudo-history, but the stories endure, the symbols remain. And scattered throughout Europe's oldest traditions are persistent references to a lost northern origin, a place not of frost and darkness, but of wisdom and light. The rune stones of Scandinavia still stand, weathered but legible. Spirals, concentric circles, and labyrinthine carvings appear alongside runes, as if holding meanings we have yet to unlock. Did the Norse carry with them more than myth? Did they inherit echoes of a forgotten science, preserved in symbol and saga? Perhaps we are looking not for monuments, but for resonance, for patterns in the stars, in the language, in the stories passed down from firelit halls and ice-bound coasts. And so, as we turn from the stone circles of the north and the sagas of long-vanished gods, we are left to ask, what memory hides behind the names Asgard and Hyperborea? What knowledge was preserved in the myths, disguised as magic, but born from understanding? And what might we rediscover if we learn to listen not just to the words, but to the silence between them? In the quiet hills of southern Ohio, where the forests grow thick and the air hums with the memory of ancient winds, there winds a colossal figure through the earth, silent, sinuous, and impossibly precise. Seen from the ground, it appears as a series of undulating earthen mounds, but from above, its shape becomes unmistakable, a great serpent uncoiling across the ridge, its jaws open wide, encircling an egg-like form. This is the Serpent Mound, stretching over 1,300 feet in length and varying in height from 1 to 3 feet, the Serpent Mound is the largest effigy mound of its kind anywhere in the world. Its coils twist and curve with elegant symmetry, ending in a spiral tail that seems to encode motion, meaning, or perhaps even time itself. Who built this enormous figure, and for what purpose? But age is only part of the mystery. The Serpent Mound is not just a monument, it's an alignment. The curves of the serpent's body correspond to the lunar phases. Its head aligns almost perfectly with the setting sun on the summer solstice. The egg it appears to be swallowing may mark a solar event or something more symbolic: creation, rebirth, cosmic cycles. Other points along its length align with solstices and equinoxes, suggesting not just knowledge of the sky, but a deep understanding of celestial mechanics. How did its builders achieve such accuracy without written records, telescopes, or modern instruments? How did they know where to place each curve, each angle, so that it echoed the turning of the heavens? And why a serpent? The serpent is a powerful and ancient symbol, found in mythologies and sacred traditions across the world. In Mesoamerica, the plumed serpent Quetzalcoatl was a god of knowledge and the stars. In India, the coiled serpent Kundalini represents hidden energy and spiritual awakening. In the Norse world, the Midgard serpent encircles the earth. The motif repeats again and again across time and continents. Was this simply coincidence? Or does the symbol carry a deeper meaning, remembered by ancient cultures and encoded into the earth itself? Some researchers propose that the Serpent Mound was more than ceremonial, that it was an observatory, a calendar, or even a power center, built on a site where energy converges. The mound rests on the edge of a massive geological anomaly, a crypto-explosion structure, or ancient impact site. The underlying rock is fractured and uplifted, suggesting the region was shaped by a tremendous force long ago. Could the builders have chosen this site for that reason? Did they sense something in the land? Magnetic fields, subtle vibrations, the residue of cataclysm? Some believe the mound amplifies natural energies, its shape acting like a waveguide or antenna, tuned to frequencies we no longer perceive. Others point to its spiral tail as evidence of encoded motion, time, DNA, or the path of celestial bodies. Spirals recur in sacred art, in galaxies, in shells, in our very biology. Were these ancient architects encoding principles of the universe into the soil beneath their feet? And how was it constructed? The precision of the mound's form, the consistency of its scale, and the effort required to move and shape the earth suggest a level of organization and knowledge often underestimated in pre-Columbian North America. No heavy machinery, no written blueprints, just knowledge passed orally and a vision executed with stunning fidelity. Why go to such lengths to build a serpent visible only from above? Who was meant to see it? Some theorists suggest the Serpent Mound, like the Nazca lines of Peru or the geoglyphs of Kazakhstan, was designed for aerial viewing, not from mountains or towers, but from the sky itself. Was it meant for the gods, for spirits, or for something else? Mainstream scholars remain skeptical of such ideas, and rightly so. Yet, the mystery persists. The Serpent Mound does not quite fit the patterns of known indigenous burials or settlements. No artifacts of daily life were found within the mound. No bones, no tools, just the shape, the presence of the serpent itself. It remains, quietly coiled along the ridge, its meaning elusive, its purpose half buried in time. Even today, the site continues to attract researchers, pilgrims, and seekers of forgotten truths. Some come for the astronomy, others for the energy, and some simply to stand in the presence of something that feels older than history, something that whispers of a world where science, spirituality, and nature were not separate, but one. And so we are left to wonder, was the Serpent Mound a monument to the sun and stars, a portal of energy and earth, or the lingering memory of a civilization that once knew how to speak to the cosmos through the ground beneath their feet? What other messages lie hidden in the land, shaped not in stone or text, but in the very contours of the earth itself, still waiting to be understood? In the humid lowlands of southern Mexico, where the rivers twist like serpents through dense jungles and the earth is thick with ancient memory, stone faces emerge from the soil, silent, massive, and watching. These are the colossal heads of the Olmecs, each one carved from volcanic basalt, each one weighing up to 50 tons. Some are nearly 3 meters tall, with broad noses, closed lips, and helmet-like headgear. They gaze across the landscape as if guarding secrets far older than the civilizations that followed. The Olmecs are often called the mother culture of Mesoamerica, an enigmatic civilization that flourished from around 1600 BCE to 400 BCE, long before the Maya, long before the Aztecs. Their influence is unmistakable. Complex calendars, ritual ball games, pyramidal architecture, and hieroglyphic writing all appear first in Olmec culture before echoing outward across the ancient Americas. But where did they come from? And how did they acquire such a high level of sophistication, seemingly without precedent? Mainstream archaeology tells us the Olmecs were agriculturalists and artisans, a riverine people who organized themselves into early chiefdoms and ceremonial centers like San Lorenzo, La Venta, and Tres Zapotes. They built earthen platforms, carved jade figurines, and aligned their sacred structures with celestial events. Their cities reveal advanced planning, trade networks, and a layered religious worldview centered around jaguars, sky serpents, and cosmological dualities. Yet, despite their achievements, we know remarkably little about the Olmecs. Their writing system, glimpsed in symbols etched on stone tablets and pottery shards, remains undeciphered. Their language, possibly an early form of Mixozoic, has left no extensive texts. What survives is sculptural, symbolic, and monumental. And in those monuments, the mystery deepens. The colossal heads, found far from any known quarries, suggest transportation methods far beyond what was thought possible for a people without the wheel, without draft animals, and without metal tools. The basalt used to carve them was sourced from the Tuxtla Mountains, over 50 miles from some of the sites where the heads now rest. How were they moved? Floated on rafts? Hauled by coordinated teams? Even with the best theories, the logistics remain daunting. And then there's the artistry. Each head is unique, thought to represent individual rulers or revered figures, but all share a striking realism and an expression of quiet intensity. The craftsmanship is precise, confident, deliberate. How did the Olmecs develop the skills and tools to sculpt such massive forms with such detail? Speculative thinkers have proposed more radical ideas. Some note the uncanny resemblance of the head's features to those of African, Polynesian, or even Southeast Asian peoples, raising the controversial possibility of pre-Columbian transoceanic contact. Others point to the helmets, interpreted by some as protective gear or symbolic headdresses, but by others as something stranger. Could they depict advanced technology, headgear of unknown function? Some go further still, suggesting the heads memorialize visitors from another world. Of course, there is no hard evidence to support such claims, and yet, the Olmecs remain tantalizingly elusive. Their sudden appearance as a complex society, their use of magnetic stone compasses, and their alignment of ceremonial sites to solstices and celestial points all hint at a level of knowledge we do not fully understand. One particularly curious artifact, the so-called Cascajal block, discovered in the early 2000s, contains symbols that may represent the oldest known writing in the Americas. Though its authenticity is debated, the block's flowing script, if real, could suggest a sophisticated written tradition that has yet to be fully uncovered. The Olmecs also understood earth and energy in subtle ways. Many of their artifacts are made of magnetite, a naturally magnetic mineral. In fact, some archaeologists believe the Olmecs may have been the first people to discover and utilize magnetism. Did they use it purely for symbolic purposes, or could it have had a more functional role, perhaps in navigation, orientation, or even something we can't yet imagine? The layout of their sacred sites may offer additional clues. At La Venta, massive stone altars, buried mosaics, and carefully oriented complexes suggest a symbolic mapping of the cosmos. Some researchers believe the site encodes astronomical cycles, including lunar standstills and planetary alignments. Was this merely for ritual? Or did the Olmecs possess a deeper knowledge of the sky, perhaps inherited from an even older tradition? And what of the figures themselves? Olmec statues often depict beings with almond-shaped eyes, open mouths, and elongated skulls, sometimes with serpentine or amphibian features. Were these purely mythical creatures, or stylized representations of entities remembered from a distant past? In the jungle silence, surrounded by colossal stone faces and the buried remnants of temples and plazas, it's easy to feel the presence of something lost, something that once was and is no longer. A civilization that rose with grace and order, then vanished into obscurity, leaving behind only stone and mystery. What knowledge did the Olmecs possess that we have yet to rediscover? Were they truly the first, or simply the latest in a long line of forgotten builders? And as we unearth more of their legacy, what other voices from the ancient world might begin to speak again? What else lies beneath the earth, waiting to reshape everything we thought we knew about the beginning? Far out in the South Pacific Ocean, isolated by thousands of miles of open water, lies a sliver of volcanic rock barely visible on the map. It is a place of wind and stone, silence and staring eyes. This is Rapa Nui, better known as Easter Island. Scattered across its windswept plains are nearly 900 colossal stone figures, called moai. Some stand proudly on coastal platforms, others lie unfinished in quarries, half buried or toppled over by time. They gaze inland, not toward the sea as one might expect, but back toward the heart of the island, as if watching over something forgotten. Each statue can weigh over 80 tons, with some reaching heights of over 30 feet. Carved from solid volcanic tuff, they were created by a people with no draft animals, no pulleys, and no known metal tools. And yet, somehow, they were moved across uneven terrain, sometimes for miles, and raised onto ceremonial platforms with near-perfect balance. How was it done? Mainstream theories suggest a system of ropes, logs, and manpower, teams of islanders walking the statues upright, shuffling them across the landscape with coordinated force. It's a compelling image, and small-scale experiments have had partial success. But critics argue the physics remain daunting, especially when considering the sheer number of moai, their fragile necks, and the steep, sometimes muddy slopes they would have crossed. The islanders themselves, in oral tradition, speak of something else. The moai, they say, walked. They were animated, moved by spiritual energy, mana, channeled by priestly power or sacred chants. Myth, metaphor, or a veiled memory of forgotten technology, ritual-based, energetic, and incomprehensible to modern minds. Even stranger is what lies beneath the soil. For decades, only the heads of the moai were visible, leading many to believe they were partial statues. But excavation revealed that most have full bodies, arms, torsos, intricate carvings etched into their backs, buried over centuries by erosion and time. Why were so many left half-finished? Why are dozens still embedded in the quarry at Rano Raraku, as if abandoned mid-process? Some researchers suggest a sudden collapse of society halted the work. Others believe the quarry itself was sacred, its statues never meant to leave. But still others ask a more provocative question. Were these efforts interrupted or intentionally frozen? The mystery doesn't stop with the statues. The Ahu platforms, stone foundations upon which many moai stand, are megalithic in their own right. Massive slabs of stone, fitted together with remarkable precision, some with interlocking joints and beveled edges reminiscent of sites thousands of miles away, like those in Peru or Egypt. Could this be a case of parallel development? Or might there have once been shared knowledge that traveled across oceans, long before recorded history says it could? Then there is the enigmatic script of Rapa Nui, Rongorongo. Carved into wooden tablets in looping glyphs, Rongorongo is one of the world's only known written systems to emerge independently, and it remains undeciphered. Some believe it to be a mnemonic device, a symbolic representation of chance or genealogy. Others argue it holds astronomical data, religious codices, or even scientific principles now lost. What culture, on an island so isolated, developed a script so complex? And how did they lose it? One theory is collapse, ecological or social. According to this view, deforestation, overpopulation, and internecine conflict eroded the fabric of Rapa Nui society. But others challenge this narrative. Recent studies suggest the islanders adapted far better than once thought, and that the true devastation came only with European contact, disease, slave raids, and cultural suppression. If the knowledge was not lost in chaos, could it have been hidden? The moai were not mere decorations. They were, in the belief of the islanders, repositories of spirit, ancestors made eternal, their presence encoded in stone. They were placed with ritual, aligned with stars, seasons, and the flow of life. Was this symbolic or functional? Could the statues have once been part of a greater system, energetic, geomantic, even technological? A few fringe researchers have gone further, suggesting the moai may have interacted with telluric currents, magnetic fields, or subtle energies, acting not only as spiritual icons, but as ancient machines. There is no hard evidence to support this, but the theory persists, fueled by the site's enigmatic layout and the island's deep oral lore. In the quiet hills of Rapa Nui, where the wind still whispers through grass and volcanic stone, the mystery remains palpable. The moai continue to stand, weathered but unyielding, their blank eyes watching not the sea, but something behind us, something already past. Were they guardians of memory, pillars of a forgotten science, echoes of a civilization that understood the land, the sky, and the self in ways we no longer can? And if so, what was the price of forgetting? As we look out over the island's silent fields, where stone giants lie dreaming in the earth, we are left with a question. What knowledge sleeps beneath the surface of this place, waiting, like the buried torsos of the moai, to be uncovered once more? In the misty dawn of China's ancient heartland, before the rise of emperors and the forging of dynasties, legends stir like smoke drifting over the Yellow River. It is a land shaped by mountains and myths, where time folds into poetry, and memory becomes indistinguishable from myth. Here, long before the Great Wall, before the terracotta warriors, there existed tales of sages, sky beings, and golden ages, a pre-dynastic world both wondrous and elusive. Among the oldest of these tales are the stories of the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors, semi-divine rulers said to have brought civilization to humanity. They did not conquer by sword or decree, but by wisdom, technology, and celestial insight. Fuxi, the serpent-bodied sage, taught writing and divination. Nuwa, his counterpart, repaired the sky and shaped humankind from yellow clay. Shennong introduced agriculture and herbal medicine, while Huangdi, the Yellow Emperor, was said to ride in a chariot pulled by dragons and wield instruments of power that today defy explanation. These figures occupy a space between legend and history. Mainstream scholars view them as symbolic ancestors, mythical archetypes representing the slow evolution of culture. But others see the possibility of something deeper, echoes of a forgotten past, when knowledge and power came not gradually, but suddenly, bestowed or inherited, rather than discovered. Could China's pre-dynastic legends point to an earlier, advanced civilization, now lost to time? Some clues lie in the land itself. High in the mountains of Qinghai, near the desolate shores of Lake Tosan, sits an enigmatic structure known as the Baigong Pipes. Dozens of pipe-like formations protrude from the rock and into the lake, embedded in both the mountain and the earth around it. They are hollow, branching, and irregular in their arrangement, some as wide as a human arm. Tests have revealed that the material contains high levels of iron and traces of unknown compounds, with some tubes showing remarkable resistance to corrosion. The formations, while possibly natural, bear uncanny similarities to industrial remnants. Theories abound. Could they be the remains of an ancient hydraulic system, a natural phenomenon, or something else entirely? Perhaps the remnants of an infrastructure built by a culture now erased from the surface of history. Further east, in the Loess Plateau, mysterious carved discs were discovered in the 1930s and later detailed by Chinese researchers. Known as the Dropa stones, each is a thin, granite disc with a central hole and finely etched grooves that spiral toward the center. Grooves that some believe contain microscopic inscriptions. The Dropa story is widely disputed, and many of the artifacts are now missing or shrouded in controversy. Yet the legend persists, speaking of star beings who crash-landed in the region and lived among the early peoples of the highlands, beings with great knowledge, but no way home. Again and again, in China's earliest writings, there are references to celestial rulers and cosmic order. The I Ching, one of the oldest texts in human history, describes a universe structured by binary codes and energetic principles, foundations that some have compared to modern computing. The 8 trigrams associated with Fuxi are said to have been revealed as patterns on the shell of a tortoise. Are these mere philosophical constructs, or vestiges of a system that once encoded natural laws in symbols more ancient than script? There are architectural riddles too. Long before the grandeur of the Forbidden City or the temples of Xi'an, Neolithic sites like Liangzhu and Sanxingdui reveal sudden leaps in urban planning, bronze casting, and spiritual complexity. At Sanxingdui, uncovered in the 1980s, archaeologists found massive bronze masks, strange humanoid statues, and artifacts unlike anything seen in the rest of Chinese prehistory. With exaggerated eyes and stylized expressions, the figures seem almost alien, connected to no known culture and suggesting an advanced society that vanished abruptly. The city walls of Liangzhu, meanwhile, dating back 5,000 years, rival those of later dynasties in their scale and engineering. Built with flood-resistant layers, drainage systems, and symmetrical layouts, they reflect a mastery of environmental control. Who taught this knowledge, and why did it disappear? In Chinese myth, the knowledge of the ancients is said to have been lost in great floods, heavenly punishments, and the passing of divine rulers. The world before the Xia dynasty, the first dynasty recognized by official historiography, is portrayed as a time of cosmic disorder, slowly brought under control. But what if these legends preserve more than moral allegory? What if they preserve memory? Could China's earliest tales be misunderstood chronicles of real events, of encounters with beings whose tools and wisdom surpassed what we consider possible for the time? The Yellow Emperor, said to have ruled around 2700 BCE, is described as not only a political leader, but a physician, astronomer, and engineer. He fought great battles, not with swords, but with mirrors that captured sunlight, with mechanical birds and chariots of fire. He communicated through spiritual light and left behind a legacy of medicine and metaphysics that still underpins traditional Chinese healing today. Was Huangdi a mythic construct, or the last remembered figure of a civilization now buried beneath the sediments of time? China is a land where history and myth are inseparable, where dragons trace the path of rivers and ancestors speak through the wind. In this vast and ancient landscape, the stones and stories alike seem to whisper of something more, something that came before, and so we are left to wonder. Is the tapestry of China's legendary past woven only of myth? Or does it conceal the faint but persistent outline of a civilization far older, far wiser, and still waiting to be understood? Beneath the golden sands of the Egyptian desert, where time slows and the Nile winds with ancient patience, stone giants rise from the horizon. The Giza Plateau, with its pyramids, sphinxes, and subterranean chambers, has long stood as a monument to civilization's reach toward eternity. But among the hieroglyphs and stelae, in the sacred texts of priests and pharaohs, there lies a whisper of something older, something that came before pharaohs, before dynasties, before time itself. The ancient Egyptians called it Zep Tepi, the first time. According to temple inscriptions and the legends inscribed on walls from Abydos to Edfu, Zep Tepi was an era when gods walked among men, when order was imposed upon chaos, and when the foundations of civilization were laid by beings of immense wisdom and power. It was a time of creation, not metaphorical but actual. A golden age whose memory endured through millennia of priesthood and ritual, preserved not only in myth but encoded, some believe, in stone. Mainstream Egyptology views Zep Tepi as symbolic, a cosmogony used to explain the cyclical nature of the universe. But what if the ancients were describing something more literal, a real epoch lost to time, remembered not as legend, but as legacy? The temples speak of divine rulers, Ptah, Osiris, Thoth, Horus, not as mere deities, but as kings. Their reigns are listed in the Turin King List and the writings of Manetho, who describes pre-dynastic kings ruling for thousands of years before the first human pharaohs. The Palermo stone and Cairo stone echo similar claims, recording the reigns of gods and demigods, years measured not in decades, but in centuries. How were such timelines conceived? Were they poetic exaggerations or echoes of a forgotten chronology? Some researchers believe that Zep Tepi marks the remnants of an advanced civilization, possibly global in nature, that flourished long before the rise of Egypt's Old Kingdom. A civilization whose knowledge of mathematics, astronomy, and engineering far surpassed what has traditionally been credited to early societies. They point to the pyramids, not merely as tombs, but as energy devices or repositories of information. The Great Pyramid of Giza, in particular, continues to defy full explanation. Its alignment to true north is nearly perfect, more precise than any structure until the modern era. Its dimensions encode mathematical constants, pi, the golden ratio, the curvature of the Earth. Its internal chambers are cut with an accuracy beyond the tools believed to be available at the time. Was this engineering brilliance the result of slow, cumulative innovation, or inherited knowledge? Then there is the Sphinx. Its body, weathered by deep vertical fissures, suggests erosion patterns more consistent with water than wind. Geologist Robert Schoch and others argue that this points to a much older origin, perhaps 9,000 years ago, when heavy rains last fell on the Giza Plateau. Could the Sphinx predate dynastic Egypt entirely? Could it be a surviving monument from Zep Tepi itself? The idea is not without controversy. Egyptologists maintain that the Sphinx dates to around 2500 BCE, commissioned by Pharaoh Khafre. Yet, the absence of inscriptions, the disproportionate size of the head to the body, and the geological evidence have fueled decades of debate. And then, there are the so-called impossible artifacts. Massive blocks weighing hundreds of tons, some at Baalbek, some at Giza, appear cut and transported with a precision that challenges even modern cranes. The Serpent of Saqqara houses granite sarcophagi so large, so perfectly polished, that their creation seems out of step with the tools of the era. In some cases, the interiors show evidence of lathe-like precision, smooth, curved surfaces that suggest machine work. Yet, the official narrative insists they were chiseled by hand, one strike at a time. Could these be relics not of human ingenuity alone, but of knowledge retained from an earlier epoch? Inside the Temple of Edfu, carved into the walls of its sanctuary, is the so-called Edfu creation text. It tells of the island of the egg, of divine builders and primeval beings who constructed the first temples using sacred geometry and cosmic law. The texts are fragmentary, complex, and shrouded in allegory. But within them lies a persistent motif, a civilization wiped out by cataclysm, whose survivors encoded their wisdom in the design of sacred structures, structures meant to endure the ages. Was Tepe a memory of that lost age? Not Atlantis, not a mythic paradise, but the last breath of a real, ancient world. A civilization not defined by vast cities, but by deep understanding. A people who mapped the sky, measured the stars, and built in harmony with the rhythms of the earth. If so, what happened to them? Flood? Fire? Planetary shift? The ancient texts speak of the Great Flood, of wars between gods, of the fall of order into chaos. These echoes are not unique to Egypt. They resonate through the myths of Sumer, India, Mesoamerica, and beyond. Is it coincidence or convergence? Perhaps the greatest riddle of Tepe is not the question of whether it happened, but why its memory was preserved so carefully, so reverently, across the span of Egyptian history. Every pharaoh, every priest, invoked the first time not as fiction, but as origin, the blueprint from which all sacred architecture, ritual, and rule was drawn. Were they remembering a myth, or were they following instructions? And so, amid the silent colossi of Giza, beneath the sands that still conceal ancient rooms and long-lost passages, we are left with a question. Was Tepe just the beginning of Egyptian myth, or the fading footprint of something far more ancient than we've ever imagined? And if the echoes still resonate through stone, what else remains buried, waiting to speak once more? As the morning mist rises from the jungle floor of northern Cambodia, the silhouette of stone towers pierces the sky, lotus-shaped spires emerging from a dense canopy, their reflections shimmering in ancient moats. Angkor Wat, the jewel of the Khmer Empire, stands in quiet defiance of time. Its walls are etched with myths and wars, gods and stars. A temple, a city, a cosmological map, all in one. Built in the early 12th century, officially dedicated to Vishnu, and later transformed into a Buddhist sanctuary, Angkor Wat is the largest religious monument in the world. But beyond its grandeur lies a web of unanswered questions about scale, purpose, and technological prowess that appears to surpass its age. At the height of its power, the Khmer Empire ruled over a vast stretch of Southeast Asia, from southern Vietnam to parts of Thailand, Laos, and Myanmar. Its capital, Angkor, was once home to up to 1 million people, an urban center larger than any city on Earth at the time. Hidden beneath the jungle, only recently revealed through LiDAR scans, lies an immense network of roads, canals, reservoirs, and hydraulic systems, evidence of a complex civilization with an advanced understanding of water management, engineering, and urban planning. How did they do it? The Khmer didn't have modern machinery, cranes, or iron tools, and yet They moved sandstone blocks, some weighing up to 1.5 tons, over long distances, carving and fitting them with precision so fine that some joints require no mortar. The city's orientation, the alignment of towers and causeways, and the relationship between buildings mirror celestial bodies with eerie accuracy. Angkor Wat itself is aligned to the equinoxes, its central axis pointing directly west, an unusual orientation for a Hindu temple. Was this merely symbolic, or did it serve a functional purpose, perhaps tracking cosmic cycles, mapping time, or something more? The temple's bas-reliefs tell stories of gods and demons, battles and divine orders. But among the carvings is something stranger. Hidden high on one of the walls, a small depiction of what appears to be a stegosaurus, an animal unknown to science until the 19th century, supposedly extinct for over 60 million years. Most scholars dismiss it as coincidental, a stylized creature misinterpreted by modern eyes. But it remains one of many curiosities carved into the ancient stones. And then there is the water. The hydraulic engineering of Angkor is staggering in its scale. Barrays, giant rectangular reservoirs, stretch for miles, collecting and distributing water across the city. Moats, canals, and ponds form a system so intricate it allowed the Khmer to farm year-round, even through monsoons and droughts. Some scholars suggest the system also helped regulate temperature, manage silt, and prevent disease. Others suspect it had ritual or cosmological significance, mirroring the mythic oceans that surround Mount Meru, the sacred axis of the universe in Hindu and Buddhist cosmology. Could this system have also functioned in ways we do not yet understand? When viewed from above, the layout of Angkor takes on new meaning. Some researchers believe it reflects a mandala, a sacred geometric diagram designed to harmonize space and spirit. Others have compared the positioning of key temples, Angkor Wat, Bayon, Preah Khan, Ta Prohm, to star constellations, particularly Draco. Was this mere symbolism? Or were the builders encoding celestial knowledge, perhaps even frequencies, into the very bones of their city? The level of precision, the alignment, the scale. It has led some to suggest that the Khmer were guided by knowledge not yet fully recovered. Not magic, but perhaps a lost science. Could they have accessed principles of resonance, sacred geometry, or geomagnetism to plan and build their city? Could the great stone blocks, assembled without concrete, be resonating together in subtle ways, designed not only to endure, but to remember? We do not know. When the Khmer Empire declined in the 15th century, much of Angkor was abandoned. The jungle reclaimed it. For centuries, vines crept over walls, roots split stone, and birds roosted in towers once filled with incense and chant. Yet, the site remained intact, not just surviving, but enduring, watching. Today, satellites and aerial imaging have revealed that Angkor was not just a cluster of temples, but a vast urban machine, far larger and more complex than previously imagined. Underground structures, previously invisible to the naked eye, suggest the Khmer were building not only outward, but downward. Subterranean channels, buried chambers, and forgotten paths, some yet to be excavated. What might still lie hidden beneath the surface? Was the Khmer Empire simply a great civilization, remarkable for its time, yet within the bounds of conventional history? Or did it inherit knowledge from an older source, something whispered through myth and stone, something long since erased from official records? The stories endure. Of Devarajas, god-kings, who channeled divine authority, of temples built overnight by celestial beings, of sacred stones that could speak, and reservoirs that glowed under moonlight. Dismissed as legend, perhaps, but in the heat and silence of Angkor's courtyards, the line between story and memory begins to blur. And so we are left to ask, Was Angkor Wat merely a monument to devotion? Or was it something more? A gateway, a code, a machine for aligning earth and sky? What legacy did the Khmer leave behind, etched into stone and buried beneath root and ruin? And if their knowledge still lingers, dormant but waiting, what might it reveal? Once we learn how to see it. In the stark beauty of the American Southwest, where red sandstone cliffs rise like ancient sentinels and wind whispers through canyons carved by time, ruins lie tucked into alcoves of rock, high, unreachable, and perfectly placed. These are the remnants of a people long vanished. A people we call the ancestral Puebloans, or as they were once known, the Anasazi. Their homes are carved directly into the face of the earth, multi-story cliff dwellings with fine masonry and T-shaped doorways clinging to the walls of Mesa Verde, Chaco Canyon, and Cañón de Chelly. They built great kivas, circular subterranean chambers used for ceremony, communion, and perhaps something more. Their roads were straight and unbroken, stretching across vast expanses of desert, cutting through canyons, mesas, and even stone itself. Not for trade, not for ease, but aligned, perfectly, with celestial events and sacred geography. Why? Mainstream archaeology tells us the ancestral Puebloans were a brilliant and adaptive culture. Between 500 and 1300 CE, they developed sophisticated agriculture, astronomy, and architecture. They mapped the skies, tracked solstices and equinoxes, and embedded cosmology into their daily lives. Their communities, especially at Chaco Canyon, were carefully designed, aligned not just to the sun and moon, but to something deeper, perhaps even planetary cycles. But many questions remain. Chaco Canyon, in present-day New Mexico, is one of the most enigmatic of their sites. Here, the ancestral Puebloans built massive great houses, multi-story complexes with hundreds of rooms and thick sandstone walls, out of more than 200,000 trees and millions of sandstone blocks. The effort required would have demanded intense organization, planning, and a shared vision across generations. Yet, there is no evidence of a centralized government, no palaces, no known ruling elite. How was such coordination achieved, and what was it all for? Pueblo Bonito, the largest great house at Chaco, is a D-shaped structure with over 600 rooms, some carefully plastered and painted. Its layout, when viewed from above, seems almost schematic, mathematical, as if it were not just a village, but a diagram. Some researchers believe it reflects a solar calendar. Others see lunar alignments, specifically the 18.6-year lunar standstill, a cycle so subtle and complex that even modern astronomers rarely track it unaided. How did the ancestral Puebloans know? On Fajada Butte, a solitary sandstone formation within Chaco Canyon, 3 massive slabs of stone lean against the cliff face. Behind them, a spiral petroglyph is carved into the wall. Twice a year, on the summer and winter solstices, a shaft of sunlight pierces the rock and perfectly bisects the spiral. At other times, it aligns differently, marking the lunar cycles. Known as the Sun Dagger, this site functions as an astronomical instrument, built, calibrated, and preserved without metal, without written language, without modern tools. Coincidence? Or evidence of ancient precision? And then there are the roads. Over 180 miles of engineered roads radiate from Chaco Canyon, arrow straight, some as wide as 30 feet, seemingly indifferent to topography. They climb cliffs, descend valleys, and stretch across the desert in eerily straight lines, often leading nowhere visible. What were they for? They do not connect villages in a practical sense. Some believe they were ceremonial pathways, routes for sacred journeys or ritual processions. Others suggest they formed part of a larger energetic grid, channels of movement, perhaps even resonance. Could the ancestral Puebloans have understood something about the land, its energy, its alignment, that we have since forgotten? The masonry at Chaco is precise. Stones cut and shaped, walls curved for stability and for aesthetics. Some walls still stand perfectly straight after 1,000 years of exposure to desert extremes. At a time when Europe struggled in the medieval dark, these desert engineers mastered harmony between form and function, cosmos and earth. Yet the greatest mystery is not how they built, but why they left. Around 1300 CE, the ancestral Puebloans abandoned Chaco and many of their other major sites. The reasons are debated: drought, resource depletion, social upheaval, perhaps all three. But to those who visit these places, who walk the dry canyon floors and feel the silence still clinging to the ruins, it feels like something more, as if they didn't simply vanish, but withdrew, on purpose. Some oral traditions among modern Pueblo peoples speak of migration, guided by prophecy or celestial events, of returning to the land only when the time is right. Others speak of star knowledge passed down in ceremony, of ancestors who came from the sky and taught them to align their lives with the sun, the moon, and the stars. Could their departure have been part of a larger cycle, one not just of survival, but of meaning? Among the petroglyphs left behind are spirals, thunderbirds, humanoid figures with rays emanating from their heads. Some appear abstract, others eerily lifelike. Are they visions, records, warnings, or windows into a kind of understanding we've since lost? An ability to see the earth and sky not as separate realms, but as one interconnected system. And what if their architecture, their roads, their kivas were not just cultural expressions, but instruments? Instruments for aligning consciousness, space, and time? Devices not made of metal and wire, but of stone and silence? The ancestral Puebloans left behind no written records. Their story survives in stone, in earth, in the memory of their descendants. And yet the precision, the scale, the intent behind their constructions continue to provoke wonder and quiet disbelief. Were they simply a remarkably advanced indigenous society, thriving against the odds in a harsh desert? Or were they the stewards of a deeper legacy, one that reached beyond survival and into the realm of the sacred, the cosmic, and perhaps the technological? And as the canyon walls glow red in the setting sun, as stars begin to emerge over the empty roads that lead into the desert night, one question lingers. What were they really building here? And what might still be waiting, buried in stone and shadow, to be understood?